You're not gonna know because they've already filled out the form.
Here's her right here.
Yeah.
Can I Danielle and Donna?
Yeah, but you're still only gonna get like 4 minutes max.
The both of us? Oh, she won't talk that long. Let's do it.
I mean, you guys can come up for her if you want to. It doesn't matter. Okay, that's fine too. Just make sure you announce your name for the record. You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we could please call to order the regular City Commission meeting for April 11th, 2018. If we could please have roll call.
Commissioner Drosky.
Here?
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Parnes.
Here.
Vice Mayor Battle. Here. Mayor Gantz.
Here. Could everyone please rise for a moment of silence in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I could please remind everyone to please turn off your cell phones or at least silence them during the meeting. We'll be making that same announcement about halfway through when someone's phone goes off, so just a reminder. If we could have the approval of the City Commission meeting minutes for March 6, 2018, and the approval of the City Commission, the City Commission workshop meeting minutes for February 21st.
I make a motion to approve those 2 minutes.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. We have approval of the City Commission agenda for April 11th, 2018.
Motion to approve tonight, the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. We have a recognition of our Water Conservation Month here. Whereas water is a basic and essential need for every living creature, and whereas the state of Florida, water management districts, and the city of Deerfield Beach are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation, and whereas the city of Deerfield Beach and the state of Florida have designated April, typically a dry month, when water demands are most acute, Florida's Water Conservation Month to educate citizens about how they can help save Florida's precious water resources. And whereas the city of Deerfield Beach has always encouraged and supported water conservation through various educational programs and special events, every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference in conserving water. Every business, industry, school, and citizen can save water and thus promote a healthy economy and a community. Now, therefore, I, Bill Gans, Mayor of the City of Deerfield Beach, in recognition thereof, do hereby proclaim April as Water Conservation Month. Is there anyone here for water conservation? Like to say a few words? Then we'll move right along if you'd like not to. That's fine.
We represent the water plant. My name is Adrian. I'm the environmental compliance manager. This is Melissa. She's
administrative support specialist.
There's a partnership that the city has with the county, and if you want to know more, there's a
Banner out there about our rebate program.
and yes, we can't say enough how much we appreciate everybody when and if they save water. And we're grateful for all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Is she here? We have State Representative Hawkins here. No? Okay. State Representative Williams here? Patricia Williams? Not here. We're going to move forward then.
No,
City Attorney.
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach amending Chapter 70 Utilities of the Deerfield Beach City Code by creating Article 6 Stormwater Management, creating a Stormwater Management Utility and Stormwater Management Utility Fund, providing for adoption of the Stormwater Management Utility fees by resolution, providing for inclusion in the Code of Ordinances, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. This is a public hearing, second reading.
City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Battle, members of the City Commission, ladies and gentlemen, if it would please the City Commission, I would like to have Mr. Good do a smaller version of the presentation that he did at the last workshop. Is there any issue?
That would be great.
All right, Mr. Good, thank you.
Thank you, City Manager, and good evening, Mayor and Commission. Thomas Good, Environmental Services Director. So tonight, I'd like to just have a sort of a good presentation, seeing how we have the public here regarding the stormwater ordinance as well as the rate schedule. So I will be including some of the rate information in this presentation as well. So here I just want to give everybody an idea of what we're going to go through. We're going to talk a little bit about urban stormwater management, the fundamentals of a stormwater utility, what our proposed stormwater utility is, and then a quick summary on this utility request. So again, I just want to bring everybody back, just remind everybody this is development. This is premier fresh land, nothing happening, great Florida landscape, and then we have development that happens, and you can see we start consuming more of the land and creating urban environment. And then of course this is Deerfield today, which is very limited in terms of vacant land and opportunities for stormwater to be discharged. So I just want to talk real quick about what we call impervious, what's impervious, and then what that does, it creates runoff and infiltration into our storm systems or lakes and or other open bodies of water. So here in the far upper left, basically you have that pristine landscape, very little development to any at all, and most everything either evaporates or it goes into the ground. And so essentially when you have rain events, you have only about a 10% runoff. As you go to the upper right, lower left, to the bottom right, it's essentially development as it happens, and we're at a point right now where we're probably at around 50% of rainfall or rain that is what we call runoff. So we have to take care of 50% of the stormwater from a rain event. And these are the type of runoff that we're talking about, just images for you to be familiar with what we're talking about when we talk about stormwater runoff. So essentially, stormwater runoff either causes flooding or it drains away. And when it drains, it's like carrying pollutants. The primary activities that take place to address the flood and pollution concern are we do planning for strategic solutions, and we also design for implementation. And the construction, repairs, operations, and maintenance are the action items that directly support the public safety and general welfare when it comes to urban stormwater management. So I just want to give a quick snapshot of, this is Deerfield. This is just a sample of where flooding is occurring over the past year here in the city. It's, we're constantly updating this. This isn't necessarily complete at this point, but the point that I want to bring out is that there is no district in this city that is exempt from any flooding concerns. So, in fact, last year, if you all remember, we had a string of intense rain events, and through Hurricane Irma, we found that the stormwater management system here in Deerfield Beach has many vulnerable areas. So here's a short clip on a rain event that occurred last year. And I want you to notice the flooding, and I also want you to notice this is not a major event, so you don't see no trees blowing crazy. It's just regular rain event here. There's also repeated complaints from the community, and many of us witnessed many different things. I personally witnessed some water from a lake that was almost encroaching upon building foundations. I've went into some areas where there's actually water lines in the bottom of the houses. I mean, this is happening here in Deerfield. So I also want to talk a little bit about resiliency and climate change. So the first thing I want to talk about is sea level rise. And this chart here is just nothing more than show that we are subject to sea level rise. And generally speaking, there's consensus that sea level rise is happening. And the fact is that in the next 15 years, the prediction is that the sea will rise approximately 6 inches. And that's only in 15 years from now. Now, what's important about that is in this graphic here, when you have sea level rise, then you have a storm that has storm surge, and then you have a king tide, you got kind of a lot of things happening, and there's a lot of risk for us because we are a coastal city. So when you take a look at this graphics, the top shows basically what the 2010 floodplain is, and the little waves kind of show how high the water would be with the storm surge. And then when you go down to the middle, it's what is expected at 2050, what the floodplain is, and you can see that the sea itself is encroaching and the storm surge is encroaching even further onto the city. And then in 2100, this is the prediction for the floodplain, which you can see that there's a substantial rise, a substantial surge, and there is a substantial encroachment onto the properties that are further inland from the coast. Another very important factor that's happening here is that sea level rise also raises our city groundwater. If you look at these two graphics, graphic A, you'll see that the very top of it, it says land. Well, and there's a good sliver of it before it gets down to the water table. So when it rains, it seeps into the land. That's called percolation. That's where a lot of the water gets to go other than running off into the sea. But when you have sea level rise, and as in graphic B, it actually forces the groundwater table higher where you have less land. It's like a sponge. You have less to absorb water when it rains. And so it increases or intensifies the flood impacts that we have with the sea level rise. And of course, sea level rise is happening, it's being heavily felt by some of our neighbors, particularly, we've seen things in Fort Lauderdale, we've seen things in Miami. This bottom right graphic shows, this is the structure nowadays that they're putting into outfalls that are going into the intercoastals or into canal systems. And the whole goal behind that structure is to prevent water from backing up into the pipes and then flowing into wherever it is that they're draining. And this is something that we need to be implementing now ourselves. Climate change is also becoming more frequent. We have more intense storm events. So basically, climate change and sea level rise is a major challenge now and in the future. So we need to start thinking differently and begin adapting to changing environment. We cannot wait until there's a dire situation that will require hundreds of millions of dollars in the blink of an eye. So we just talked about water quantity. Now let's talk about water quality. So when drainage is working, now we got to be worried about pollution. And pollution comes from both our neighborhoods and our commercial districts. The Environmental Protection Agency is charged with regulating stormwater by the way of the Clean Water Act. And the goal of the Clean Water Act is clear, is to restore all waters of the United States to their fishable and swimmable conditions. Water pollution is tightly controlled through the issuance of what they call National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permits. We happen to be co-permittees with Broward County on this permit because it's very, very large and very, very complicated to manage. But important. There's 3 points about the NPS that's very, very important. It does not authorize a violation of Florida state surface water quality standards or groundwater quality standards. It also requires that the permittee shall reduce the discharge of pollutants to the maximum extent possible, and it requires all known, available, and reasonable methods of prevention, control, and treatment to prevent and control pollutions of waters of the state of Florida. Now, some of this is also done through what we call best management practices, and they are considered minimum requirements to meet the NPDES. And best management practices are anything from changing behavior by education to full-blown treatment systems. Best management practices require manpower to both monitor and maintenance. Additional requirements do exist. However, it is NPDES that is the regulatory burden for this city. And every year, these standards continue to get tougher and tougher to meet. There are definite, actionable consequences for violating the federal and state rules. This, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, is a cost driver for us. There are also health and economic impacts. The health risk essentially is you get mold from when you have chronically wet houses, and they can cause respiratory problems and other diseases. Infectious disease is caused by sanitary sewer system backups because when it's heavy storm flow, they somehow find a way into our into our sanitary sewer systems, overloading our lift stations, causing backups, and if you happen to be walking where a sanitary sewer is backed up, you are at risk. But there is also economic risk. If you're ill-prepared to manage rain events or even some of the sea level rise, then we will certainly lose our ability for tourism. There is also higher insurance costs that are associated with frequent damage from flooding. You have decreasing property tax base because people may not want to develop and or live in a community, a place where there's constant repeat issues. You have costly infrastructure investment. By that I mean if you have AT&T, FP&L, Comcast, and they are trying to harden their system because we chose not to fix the stormwater system, then they're going to pass those upgraded costs back to their people who are using their services. And of course, with all these combined, you will have lost to private investment. So the lead primary activity to address flooding and water quality concerns is planning and design. Note very carefully, I just want to make it clear that storm drain systems are separate from the wastewater or the storm sanitary sewer systems. They are two separate systems. They are not connected at all. Now, the city began long before the stormwater management was on the radar. So there are a lot of things out there that are either missing or are inadequate to meet today's level of service needs. And we also have newer developments that have placed greater burden on our streets and our water bodies. So we have to plan and design carefully to create solutions before these problems become too great. Another activity that helps us to achieve flood and water quality control is construction and repairs. There are many areas that we know of that need new stormwater infrastructure for flood protection, such as the ones that we had shown earlier on that map. We have a water quality improvement structure in design right now for the Kingfisher Canal to reduce the pollutants that come mainly from Federal Highway and the surrounding area. We also have repair needs, and this image on the left was something that just recently popped up on us. It's here in the city, And because we're low on resources, and this is all of a sudden concern, and we couldn't be proactive, now we're being reactive, and now we have to find funding source in order to get this thing repaired. There was no planning. Then we have operations and maintenance, and this is the final activity that addresses flooding and water quality control. Operations and maintenance, as we all know, is the lifeblood of a stormwater system. And it's like maintaining a car. We all know, keep it tuned, change the oil, replace the brakes, it will last forever. That's what we need to do. Stormwater operations and maintenance is currently supplemented by street maintenance staff. And because street maintenance is the primary function of street maintenance staff, stormwater maintenance is at a basic level of service. And because the workload in the street division and the limited funding, stormwater maintenance, again, is more reactionary than it is proactive. A proactive maintenance program could identify signs of failures more quickly before they occur, such as the box that I showed you in the previous slide. So when it comes to urban stormwater management, there are many efforts that we have to do simultaneously in order to reduce flooding, adapt to sea level rise, and protect water quality. Of course, we need adequate resources, and we need the comprehensive approach. We need traditional and emerging technologies to be deployed. Interagency cooperation is not just us, it's Broward County's South Florida Water Management District and our neighboring cities. And we need to have continuous community awareness, education, and engagement, because without our residents and our business partners, we cannot get this accomplished. So the fundamentals of a stormwater utility. A stormwater utility is a standalone entity, and it's usually set up as an enterprise fund. A stormwater utility can be designed to offer a limited or comprehensive set of services related to stormwater quantity and quality management. A city utility operates under the purview of the city legislative authority, which is you all. It is financially and organizationally self-sufficient. So let me demonstrate real quick to you in this chart here. I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just going to try to show you how the municipal obligations have changed over the years. So starting in 1990, it was basically just drain, 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 get everything away from you all. And these were the type of obligations that the municipalities have in regards to the 1990s. But then 10 years later, we're looking at the early 2000s, federal and state government added some additional burdens, water quality and functional requirements. Oh, didn't change it. So now we see additional obligations to the right. And then 10 years later, and then 10 years later, again around 2010, more stringent pollution monitoring and system operating parameters were added. Again, as I remind you, the MPDS is the cost driver for us in this city. And I'm going to tell you right now, the next generation of obligations is just around the corner. All these obligations have to be managed and continue to become more and more operationally and financially challenging. So having a standalone stormwater utility will allow the city to meet its municipal obligations. With the financial stability a stormwater utility can provide, regulatory requirements can be met and expansion of services can be accommodated. And the financial stability can be achieved through a service fee for cost recovery. Dedicated, stable source of funds create continuity in stormwater management program and ensures that the public health, safety, and welfare are protected. Cost of services can be tracked with clarity and certainty. Other benefits to users is property values and economic vitality is preserved by minimizing flood hazards and water pollution situations for the community. And charges for delivery of stormwater management services are equitable among all users. So I'm going to take a quick sidebar for a moment and talk about equitable charges for the services, because it's been referenced several times that we should be utilizing our general fund for stormwater services. Now, aside from the fact that general funds is what I would consider an unstable source of funds for a stable stormwater program, I want us to look at how the distribution of a service fee compares to ad valorem payments. So on the graph here on the left, the big green box is your yard. The blue box is the footprint of your house. And the gray box is the driveway to your home. To the right, we have two types of home. One's a one-story home, modest, simple. And the other is a little bit more elaborate, more amenities, two-story, a lot more square footage in the house. But the important point is that the footprint does not change. Both those houses fit within the blue box, so it does not change the amount of water that's running off the property. So if you have a service charge, each property will be charged the same exact amount of money. However, if you have ad valorem, as I've noted, I've made one home $200,000, the other $400,000. Ad valorem is based on your property value. You could see easily that the second home, or the home on the bottom, is going to be paying twice as much for that same service that is no different for any home that fits that blue box. This is what I call a fundamental flaw when a service can be defined as a unit cost, and that's what we're going to talk about with the stormwater, is we can define it as a unit cost. So I just want to talk a little bit about sufficiency and stability by creating a stormwater utility is allowable by law. State statute gives the city the right to adopt a stormwater utility and establish fees sufficient to plan, to construct, to operate, and to maintain stormwater management systems and services. A stormwater utility provides a reliable, dedicated source of revenue and an organization structure that is dedicated to stormwater concerns. A stormwater utility can be carried out, again, as a standalone operation with its own budget, implementation plan, and employees dedicated solely to stormwater system operation, maintenance, administration, and education. Also, creating a utility has the added benefit of freeing up tax dollars from the local government's general fund that would normally be used for stormwater concerns, and this extra funding can be applied towards other needs. In Broward County, we have approximately 22 of these cities currently have stormwater management utility fund systems. And if you take a note, most of them, the higher density is along the coastline of Broward County. And if you go up the full state, you will find just as an intense density of cities that have established a stormwater utility along the coast. Again, just to remind ourselves, services and costs which are included in the utility. Just highlighting a few, it's obviously the flood reduction, water quality management, planning, risk assessment, capital improvements, NPDES compliance, etc. So this is where we talk about unit cost. This is where we can get a unit measurement. And this is how we establish our equitable basis for charges of services. So essentially, what we do is we have taken the single-family resident, standalone single-family resident, as our what we call residence equivalency. And we had Hazen and Sawyer do a study for us, and they looked at every single property throughout the city of Deerfield Beach, and without going through all the black box stuff, came up with 2,788 square feet on average of impervious area per single family home. And we call that the equivalent residential unit. Now, we also have different types of residents within the city that are not detached single-family homes. And these are the other types of residents. And it's clear to know that if you had a condo, it would not take up as much space as a single-family home. And so that has been reflected in the proration of the ERUs to these different types of homes. So if you look at the single-family home, it's 2,788 square feet, and it is equivalent to 1 ERU, second line, 1 ERU. If you look at the condo, as I said, is much smaller. It is less than half of a single-family residential home, and is less than half of an ERU, and that applies to all these other types of property that we have. Now, when it comes to commercial property is a little bit different. No two commercial properties are the same. We can't classify them as types like we can with residential families. So we have to do something different. We have to take a look at each one of these independently. So let me explain a little bit about how we would apply this ERU to a commercial property. So the upper left, you see the green again, the yard, the blue, the footprint of the house, and the gray is the driveway, and that's the 1 ERU equivalent. That's the one single family. Now, when you go to the commercial property, you see it's much bigger. It's got a bigger footprint. It's got bigger pavement areas and things like that. There's a lot more impervious area on a commercial property. And so what we do is we try to divide the number of square feet of impervious area on a commercial property by the number of square feet in a single-family residential home, and we come up with the total number of ERUs for that commercial property. So coming back here, I just want to, my apologies. So I just want to talk a little bit about our proposed stormwater utility. So for the very first 3 years, these are some of the objectives that we have for the stormwater utility. And we definitely want stormwater master plan that sort of goes out and identifies a lot more of what we have. It talks a lot about topography of the city. It talks a lot about receiving bodies of water. It talks a lot about where can we move things, waters from one point to another. And it gives us some more input on our sea level rise potentials. So we need the master plan. We have also purchase of materials and equipment that we would like to do. We have stormwater administration, planning, and operations that must take place in order to run a stormwater utility. We have known flooding and drainage improvements that we have. As I've, you're going to have many of your residents tell you that they want it in front of their house now. We've heard it many times as we've gone through this process because they're known problems. We have water quality improvements related to the Kingfisher Canal and the other areas, other receiving body of waters. We want to do some dredging because there's so much silt that has gotten into some of these locations that we need to start taking care of that business too. And we are intending to pursue federal and local grants and other alternative funding sources to conduct future stormwater and drainage capital improvement projects so we lessen the burden here to the city. So I know it's small, but it's in the backup. But this is the utility expenditure line item by line item. And what I've done is I've basically highlighted the major cost items, line items here, and just wanted to talk about personnel services. I want to make it clear that we are intending to transfer 4 personnel from the streets division into the stormwater utility. We're looking at picking up 2 additional maintenance personnel, maintenance workers we call them. We definitely need a stormwater engineer to be able to handle all the technicalities of what we're doing. And we have, obviously, an admin support requirement. The contractual services will include the master plan, some dredging, and we have to go in and we have to TV a lot of the pipe that exists right now. We're going to wind up lining them just as well, too, just like we've done with the sanitary sewer. They've aged and they're broken, and we need to fix them. And the best way to do it is to line them as opposed to try to dig them up above ground. We have capital buildings. It's just simple. It's just a pro rata share of the building and warehouse maintenance upkeep. You know, it's a very small percentage, but it's still nevertheless, though, it's going to be housed. We have improvements. Again, like I say, we have local drainage projects that we already know, and we certainly have started to prioritize them, so we know where we need to head with them. And we also have some water quality improvement projects that we need to get done as well. And obviously automotive equipment, which means that we have new and replacement trucks, and we have heavy equipment like backhoe, and then a street sweeper. Which, by the way, street sweeping is a part of stormwater management, believe that or not, because of the water quality concerns. So here is the proposed stormwater utility budget at full cost, which includes planning, design, construction, operations, and maintenance. And what you can see is that the total net revenue is about $2.2 million. Total operating cost is $1.7 million. We have renewal and replacement, which includes repairs to existing assets. It's normally equal to 10% of the total operating cost. We also have a general fund charge, and a general fund charge is 15% of the total operating cost less the capital costs. And then we have a $500,000 loan that we were planning to take from the utility fund in order to seed the startup, because when you have a fee structure, you don't collect money from day one. You have to wait until you can collect your fees, and so you incur costs from day one, and so we're seeding money from out of the utility fund. So I want to make a point here. At the first reading, the Commission made it loud and clear to do our very best to sharpen that pencil and make certain that we're doing all the right things that we have to do, and we heard that. And so we were able to do some additional reductions, and we, if you recall, the initial presentation was $4.05 per ERU per month, and we've gotten it down to $3.75 per ERU per month. And we believe that this $3.75 fee stabilizes the budget activities for a period of 5 years. And so just real quick to show you a little bit about how that $3.75 compares to other municipalities that we're familiar with. This is a chart showing ERUs, dollars per ERU per month. As you can see, $3.75 for Deerfield Beach. We are below the Broward average. We are below the Florida average. We are below the Southeast Florida average by almost twice as much. And we are Southeast Florida. So there are other sources of funds, and I just want to speak to them quickly. So the general fund, we all know that's property tax revenue. It's the primary source of the general fund resources. And even though general fund can be used, general fund resources, again, are subject to many competing demands and cannot usually be considered a reliable source for ongoing funding. We also have special assessments, or what we call local improvement districts, and these funding mechanisms assess individual properties that are benefited or served by a specific capital improvement for a share of the cost of that facility. And the special benefit must be demonstrated by an increase in assessed valuation due to the improvement, and that typically is a very difficult linkage to demonstrate for stormwater improvement. We also have special fees. They're direct charges and fees which are used to recover the direct cost for services performed for a customer or a class of customer. It's not generally related to the overall service charge. These are things we call like permits and inspections, and these are things that we can charge to help supplement some of the income by people who are using our services. Then we also have capital facilities charged, typically one-time charges, and they're imposed as a condition of development, meaning basically if a developer comes in, you can ask for some of these improvements, but it's a one-time charge. But the fortunate thing is you don't pay for it, developer pays for it. Then we have conventional debt instruments, and the most commonly used long-term debt instruments are the revenue and the general obligation bonds. But if you go with a GO, again, it comes back to property valuation, and it could be an equitable fairness issue. Again, because increase in property taxes is no longer on a unit basis. And then, of course, we have special grants and loans. Some state and federally administrative grant and loan opportunities are available for capital funding only, not operation, maintenance, planning, design. So a stormwater utility, in summary, provides for regulatory compliance and meeting water quality objectives. A stormwater utility provides for enhanced flood protection and other stormwater improvements. Stormwater utility provides funding for development of strategy to address sea level rise. It provides a dedicated funding via an equitable program. Fees are flexible and directly related to the level of services received. Tracking costs are highly transparent. And it frees up general fund revenues to be repurposed for other programs and services that benefit the great city of Deerfield Beach. So, in closing, I would just like to say that it's the ever-increasing demands to meet state and federal laws, the lack of dedicated resources and instability of fund. We believe a stormwater utility is the right thing for Deerfield Beach and is being recommended for approval. So that concludes my presentation. I would also like to recognize that I have Rob Taylor of Hazen and Sawyer with us tonight as well. So if there's any questions that he can answer, he's here available for that reason as well. Thank you.
Commission, before we open to the public, do we have any comments we want to make, or do we have any questions for Mr. Good? No? I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Battle, go right ahead.
Mr. Good, I'm looking at this, and by the way, it was an excellent presentation. And I have, as you know, Dixie Highway that we're getting ready to do some work on. Is this at all, if we pass this, how will this affect that Dixie Highway corridor?
The potential is that some of the stormwater components, the spine systems that would generate the energy for that would be applicable here.
Okay.
So there would be stormwater funding for the DFB, I'm assuming.
Second question. If we approve this, in terms of flooding, as you know, down, and I took some pictures yesterday to add to your collection, down on 48th or Green Road, impassable, just with that slight rain. 14th Street, 14th Place, couldn't get around. You had to go all the way back out and go all the way around to Dixie Highway to get into the 14th and 14th. How is this, will we be able to clear up those pockets that flood out in the city when there's just a slight rain like yesterday?
Well, that's our intention, and that's part of what we listed as projects as being local drainage projects.
The question I'm getting from the citizens, if we do this, and this may not even be a fair question, is District 2 going to be the last district to have repairs done? You don't have to answer that. I just had to get it on the record because the citizens asked. Okay?
Thank you.
Anyone else on the commission? Commissioner Parnas?
Yes. How many miles of sewers, stormwater drains do we have in the city?
I cannot answer that for you. That's part of what we're doing through the master plan. We can give you a rough estimate.
That's good.
So if I had to guess, I would tell you probably about maybe 45 miles of drainage pipes, but I could tell you that I'm also probably grossly underestimating the number I'm giving you because there were many things put in the ground when this was this community started out, and a lot of things did not get put onto plans that were delivered to the city. So we're finding things as we go along, and sometimes it's pleasant and sometimes it's not. But that's the purpose of the master plan too.
Thank you, Mr. Good. We have some people that have signed up to speak. First speaker would be Dan Hers. Just because you didn't sign up to speak doesn't mean you won't get the opportunity to speak. After we go through the list of everyone who has signed up to speak, those of you who want to come up and make a comment, you're more than welcome to do that. We just try to keep it orderly.
Yep.
Name and address for the record, please.
Dan Hers, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. There is no hope of convincing the four of you who voted for this new stormwater fee to change your vote, but I just wanted the four of you to consider the following. The city just raised an additional $5.6 million from the bond offering that wasn't disclosed until 20 minutes before you voted for the bond. Did any of you ever consider asking the city manager to spend some of this extra $5.6 million on stormwater infrastructure projects? By the way, there were absolutely no restrictions on what the city manager could have spent this $5.6 million on. During the bond vote meeting, Dunlap and Associates presented a slide called Historical Coverage of Maximum Annual Debt Service. In this slide, they presented numbers that included financial information for fiscal year end September 30th, 2017, provided by the city manager. There was enough information available on this slide for anyone to conclude that when the audited fiscal year-end statements are finally given to the public, it will show general reserve balances plus money the city is waiting to get reimbursed from FEMA for Hurricane Irma in excess of $30 million. Why is that important? Because the city's own financial reserve policy states the city is required to keep a minimum of $15 million in reserves in the general fund, not twice that amount. So did any of you four consider asking the city manager why he couldn't set aside $2.5 million a year in the budget strictly for stormwater capital improvement projects? In just 4 short years, you would have $10 million in this fund. And please don't hand the citizens the tired old message that we had a recession 9 years ago and our reserves could be depleted again. The Great Recession was a once-in-75-year event. I also saw nowhere in the city's financial reserve policy that we have to plan for 3, 4, or even 5 hurricanes per year. Property values went up 8.7% last year in Deerfield Beach, and with the passage of the new tax law, more people will be moving to this tax-friendly state. We also keep hearing that 22 out of 31 cities in Broward County have a stormwater fee. Maybe the city manager would like to answer how many of those other 22 cities just raised $42 million in a bond offering that did not even go in front of the citizens for a vote. I'll answer that question for him. Not a single one. The bottom line is a new fee on the citizens should have been a last resort, not a first choice when there were so many other ways to put money aside for stormwater infrastructure. Once you create a brand new city department, the genie is already out of the bottle, and none of the four of you have asked the city manager the tough questions that needed to be asked before implementation of this new fee. Once again, you have failed the citizens.
Thank you. Joe Hines?
My name is Joe Hines. I'm at 559 Northwest 47th Terrace. I'm glad the Board of Realtors weren't here tonight to hear all the gloom and doom that predicted for the city in the next number of years. We heard about king tide, we heard about rising sea levels, and we heard about underground water. What we didn't hear about was the sky falling or the Mississippi River running dry. I don't know how we missed that. Anyway, in with the ordinance is a page 8, and it says a new and dedicated funding for the stormwater management program, and I won't read the rest of that. When it says new and dedicated, y'all did mention enterprise fund, and I gave you all a handout. I don't know if it got passed out or not, but there's a handout there, and it was from the documents that you revealed when you were going for the bond. And I'm looking at page number 14, which on Adobe is probably page 140 something. But anyway, it shows transfers. And these are enterprise funds here we're talking about. And last year, the city transferred $7.891 million from the water and sewer system to the solid waste fund to the general fund. Okay, that's $8 million. Now, sure, some of that probably was spent for some of the things they list there, but I bet you a bunch of it went right straight into the general fund, just like a pipeline that's going underground for this stormwater. This stormwater might be something we need, but this stormwater fee is a big hoax on the people because the city has all the money they need. In 2013, your projected budget was $133 million, and by 2018 it went up to $179 million. And if you added up all those years, it came out to $949 million. If you took the average of just the 2013 at 133 and you multiply that times 6, it was $798 million. So the city has had $151 million overall increase, which is $25 million a year. You don't need more money out of us for another tax. You're already charging us 2 taxes on our electric bill as it is. Now, we get down here to list of discharges on this fund, and it says something or other about, well, if we dump anything on the ground or something that's not related to stormwater, we can be fined $500 a day. That's, that's one of the kind of interesting because, what's funny about this thing is, maybe you all haven't seen it, but there's a list of all the employees and their wages, and you take the top 21 folks that's in this city, dollar-wise, that's making $100,000 or more, and there's 19 of them that don't have property in this city. 19 of them, and including the future director of this program, so he won't be subject to any of these restrictions or anything else that's going to be imposed upon the people. This is a money grab, and this is a fine grab. Thank you very much.
Michael Hudak. No applause, please, if you could. Mr. Hudak.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and other members that are before me. For the last few months, I've been attending these meetings, and I've continually heard statements about how the city's finances have been mismanaged by its leadership.
Mr. Hudak, I'm sorry. Can you please give your name and address for the record, please?
Sure. Michael E. Hudak, 34 Southeast 9th Avenue. As a result, I decided to look into this myself to determine the validity of these accusations and if the creation of a dedicated self-funding stormwater utility fee for the improvements of the city's storm drainage systems was wise, or if the added funds was just going to be misappropriated. As I've listened to these meetings, I have personally gained confidence in the city's leadership. I have also found that in February of this year, Standard & Poor's upgraded the city's credit rating from AA negative to AA. These instances give me confidence that our city's leadership is responsibly managing its finances. Creating a dedicated self-funding storm utility fee whose funds are strictly earmarked for the improvements of our storm drainage system is a must for the current residents and the future growth of our city. Some individuals suggest the city should use our reserves, which are now around $30 million, or the general fund to improve our storm system, or continuing borrowing from the road and bridge fund to repair the storm system, as reasons to object to the creation of the utility fee. We cannot continue robbing Peter to pay Paul. The Band-Aids that have been used to keep this system working are insufficient. The storm drainage system is 50-plus years old, and the system needs to be completely overhauled and upgraded. On Tuesday, April 24th, FDOT has a public workshop at the Doubletree Hilton to review their plans for Southwest 18th Street expansion. If approved, those plans will result in the cost of the city in the amount of $10 million to relocate the utilities. Last year, the hurricane damage cost the city $6 million. If we experience another hurricane in 2018 and the FDOT expansion passes, these two costs alone are potentially going to reduce the city's reserves to $10 million. How is our storm drainage system going to be upgraded then? We have to do something now. The system is failing all around the city, and every year we wait, the more antiquated the system gets. A unanimous vote on this issue will give a clear message to not only the current residents and businesses of Deerfield Beach, but also to the future residents and businesses as they look at our city as potential destinations. Mr. Good's presentation was very detailed, and I appreciate his prior assistance with a short-term fix to this My Streets flooding program. Unfortunately, yesterday's rainfall proved that this fix did not work, as myself, my son, and neighbors spent over an hour in thigh-deep water unclogging the drains.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dave Morantz.
Good evening. My name is Dave Morantz. I live at 7800 North West 87th Avenue in Tamarack, Florida. I'm here as a member of the leadership group of the Deerfield Beach Economic Development Council. The EDC has not taken a formal position on this issue, primarily because our procedures to adopt one won't be ratified till sometime in May. However, we do encourage everyone to actively participate in the discourse of public policy, particularly when it relates to the city's adopted economic development strategies. The creation of a stormwater utility is not a bumper sticker initiative. It is a complex problem that requires an understanding of all the issues and the wisdom to develop a proactive solution to sustain the best quality of life for all of those that work, live, and play in Deerfield Beach. I personally believe that there is nobody more qualified to implement that plan than duly elected officials when they base their decisions on recommendations from the professionals on city staff. I would like to compliment the city on the amount of outreach they've done, including the workshop and other public meetings. I would further like to compliment the city on the civil manner in which they strive to do their jobs. The words, body language, and genuine compassion exhibited brings us together. It increases our sense of what humanity can be. Alternatively, negative comments, personal attacks, and inappropriate behavior has a way of dehumanizing the receiver as well as the sender. At our very core, we need to defend humanity by the way we speak and behave. We may not agree on issues, but we need to remain civil. This commission has shown a great leadership in this regard, and for that you should be congratulated. We'll hear much tonight about stormwater. I'd like to make two observations about the positive side of the law of unintended results. The first is that budgeting and establishing a plan will create administrative efficiencies to delivering a basic service. The second is that the necessity, the political acrobatics, and the time-consuming process of determining what needs to be fixed and when it needs to be fixed will be eliminated from the Commission's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Perry Ecton.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. Perry Ecton, 225 Southwest 7th Court. As a resident of Deerfield Beach and as a developer trying to do business along Dixie Highway and in District 2, I want to thank this board for putting this proposal forward. I've heard a lot of people complain that, yes, it's an extra tax. However, if you were around yesterday afternoon and you lived on 7th Court, I almost needed a swimsuit to get in my front door. And that was not fun. It was knee-deep water. I saw cars turn around. It was impassable. If this fixes that problem, and if it costs me a few dollars a month to have that problem fixed, I thank you for doing that. Because it is frustrating to drive around in knee-deep water, have my car sensor goes out every time, and have to take it to the dealer to get it reset because I can't use it anymore. So if a problem can be fixed with a minor cost, I, as a resident of this community, will burden that cost. I don't have a problem with that. If you're doing what's right for the citizens, if you're doing what's right for the greater community, then we need to do that in a long-term basis. A quick fix, passing the buck, I don't know anything about prior commitments, funds being transferred from here to there. I've been in Deerfield a couple of years, and from everything I can tell, the city is doing what it needs to do to be proactive, to attract business, to attract new residents, and I want to thank this commission for doing that, and I support this initiative wholeheartedly. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Former Commissioner Preston. Ben Preston?
How you doing? Ben Preston, 640 Southwest 14th Court, Deerfield Beach. Though this is something that obviously can be needed for our community, it must not be forgotten that with stormwater fee, utility tax, and fire assessment, the fact is that there are residents in this city that it will still be hard for them to afford this. And that really includes all districts, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this puts on them a monetary obligation. We must ask the question, does that matter? Is that factored in? Because it is important. Here's one thing that we do know. Once this fee is implemented, it will never go away. It will do only one thing, and that is go up. And many of the residents in this city, in all districts, live on a fixed income. I would like to know this. Did the city do an evaluation of the present system to see if there could have been some changes that would have brought about a solution? Maybe if we had looked at it, we could have found that, there are some issues in terms of not a new design, but a redesign that might be able to allow the city to take care of it and totally eliminate the burden from our taxpayers. So, I don't know if that was done, but if that had been done, we might have found that the present system has many flaws in it and it could be fixed rather than go through the process in which we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers who'd like to care to comment on the presentation that are not signed up? We have, if it's all right, if we'll go right here, right there, and then right there, and then you. Is that all right? And then you. Is that okay? So we'll take those 5. Is that all right?
Mayor, for clarification, are there other people signed up to speak on different issues or just?
You're only here to speak on this item that's presented
this item.
right
Do
now.
you want to speak on this
I
item?
do want to speak on this item, actually.
Absolutely, that's fine. So I take it you don't.
I do.
I want to speak on something else, though, later as well.
That's fine.
Okay.
Everyone's allowed to speak on this item.
I want to go second to her, though.
Okay, that sounds great.
Danielle Landre at 264 Southeast 18th Avenue. It's mostly a question. As a business owner in Deerfield, we actually have a Broward County stormwater license for our business where we actually take care of all the stormwater that touches our property. We maintain it, we pay all the costs, we pay a permit fee to Broward County, $750 every 3 years. How is this going to affect businesses that already are paying and taking care of our own stormwater, which according to the permits, a lot of buildings built since 1997 as far as commercial structures all require a Broward County stormwater permit where we have to maintain our own stormwater. So how is that taken into account with the new fee? I don't want to be double taxed. That's my
We'll
comment.
get an answer for you. Thank you.
Hello,
Your name
everyone.
and address for the record, please.
Yes, Don Landre, 264 Southeast 18th Avenue, Deerfield Beach, 33441. Taxes, once they're set up, they're permanent. Once they're set up, they're not going away. And if there's another way to do it, Commissioner Battle, you want to know when your problems will be handled? What you do is you contact private enterprise, and you ask them, when can you get this job done? How much is it going to cost? And what's this going to be? It's a one-time fee. They fix your stormwater. Commissioner Parnas, you want to know how many miles of...
Mr. Monterey, if you could direct it to the commission in general, if you could.
Okay, in general.
Okay.
If you want to know how many miles there are of stormwater utilities, you can ask a private enterprise. They'll give you an answer right away. The private enterprise I speak of is MWI Corporation. They've been part of your community since 1926. They dewatered New Orleans after Katrina. they have a lot of experience in stormwater. They have a lot of experience in keeping things dry. That's what they do every day. There's a lot of other alternatives in setting up a permanent sort of tax on the citizens. As we said, a burden. And as the speaker said earlier, it was a good presentation, but he said, oh, the numbers went into the black box. Well, that black box never ends. That's the problem. You can get things solved, and I understand there's problems too, and I understand citizens have to swim to their cars. That's not good. That's not fair. What should happen is that problem should be solved, but it shouldn't be a permanent tax that's put upon the citizens forever. The city could find another way to get a price for that up front and figure out how to fix it right away. And again, there's experts, like I said, like MWI, that has 12 engineers on staff, like PEs on staff already. And that would be my recommendation, if the commission look into that first before making a final decision to set up a tax, because that tax will never go away. It's like the Florida Turnpike. They set up a turnpike. They said, we're going to pay for this road, then we'll stop taxing you. Well, we all know we still pay for the turnpike. The turnpike's been paid for, maintained, whatever. It's still a tax. It never goes away. So if there's another way to do it, I think the way we do it would be private enterprise. Fix the problems that we have, make sure people don't swim there, and make sure it's fixed right. Thank you.
Thank you. Name and address for the record.
My
please.
name is Angela Soar. I live at 1041 Southwest 8th Avenue. And if anybody lives in District 2, just about every street was flooded. You couldn't get out. It was all the way to the door.
I appreciate no more commentary from the public.
It was awful. It's like that every time it rains. And I don't think, we pay taxes in this city, so we have to bear the $3 or $4 to get it fixed. We trust that you guys have checked into it, and y'all gonna do the right thing, and you got my support. I just want it fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Ma'am, in the back. And then, sir, you're next. Well, let's do show of hands. We'll have them come up periodically. You're next. And then you're next, sir.
Okay, Sarah Moran, 902 Southeast 10th Court, Deerfield Beach, Florida. It's time to stop speaking in generalities on the dais about everything, including this stormwater fee. First of all, this fee isn't revenue neutral. Revenue neutral means the government may lower taxes for one particular group of people, but raise taxes for another group. This allows the revenue that they receive to remain unchanged or neutral. No matter how you politicize the stormwater fee, it amounts to an additional tax on the taxpayers of Deerfield Beach for what really should be a basic service. This fee would only be fair to the citizens of Deerfield Beach if the millage rate was reduced to cover this fee. We have heard the Commission speak about many cities that have stormwater fees. It was mentioned that Boca Raton has $10 million in their stormwater fund. I'm all for our city setting up a stormwater fund, if only we weren't already paying higher taxes than other cities that have these fees, like Boca Raton. How is it that Boca Raton can provide $10 million to a stormwater fund and yet their citizens pay lower taxes than we do? When I tried to research the plumbing records on our house back in 2010 when the city water and sewer was, to find out when the city and water and sewer was installed, I was told that these plans were non-existent. The entire neighborhood there was non-existent. I was trying to be a good citizen because the 24-inch drain that I live by on the end of Kingfisher Canal runs continuously, and I wanted to make sure that my house was not causing this. How can entire neighborhoods plans be non-existent, and yet a citizen was told by the city accountant that the city spends an average of $2 million a year right now on issues that would be covered by the stormwater fee? $2 million? Really? What is that specifically spent on? Does anybody in here know on the dais? What is that really? Is that just putting out fires like broken water drains, or are you doing anything to research the problem since 2010, 8 years ago? The city manager stated that the staff is not sure, this is in a prior meeting, what the cost would be for a stormwater fee. He stated that there is not a lot of documentation identifying the age of infrastructure as well as where stormwater infrastructure is located. Well, my goodness, this has been going on for at least 8 years since I moved in 2010, and probably more than that. Do you not have the quality of personnel in the engineering department that couldn't have taken this project on 8 years ago to find out where these drains go and where they're supplied by and do a little research? This would have been a worthwhile in-house project. With all these high salaries and qualifications, do we
Thank you,
really
ma'am.
need a third-party consultant to
Thank you, ma'am.
identify our own
Thank you.
infrastructure?
Your time's up, ma'am. Thank you.
I only have just a short amount. Can I not
Yeah,
be
would you
extended?
like-
Because I'm never here. It's not like I'm a regular groupie.
Doesn't matter whether you're regular here or not. All you have to do is request it rather than continue to talk over me.
I'm
So if
sorry.
you just like an extra minute, sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I can understand wanting to maintain a reserve, but why won't you address the fact that most of our taxes, property taxes, are going towards city government salaries, high salaries, and unsustainable pension plans? And you expect us to trust you blindly with borrowing $36 million when you won't even address a failing and antiquated water treatment plant. I'm sorry, it hasn't passed the EPA in 36 months. But trust me, because me and my family drink the water, quite frankly, is not good enough. And basic services such as roads resurfacing are in this borrowed money. You're borrowing $6.2 million to resurface roads, and that means you can't pay for them. That's a basic service that we as citizens should expect. How can the state of the city be good with this type of budgeting? Last statement. I couldn't believe the comment that with a stormwater fee there will be a total transparency as to where the dollars are spent.
Thank you, ma'am.
Why isn't there complete transparency on all city dollars spent, as well as revenues?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up. Your name and address for the record, please.
John Slattery, 1455 Southeast 5th Place. First, just like to start out, I don't think anyone is saying that spending money on the stormwater infrastructure is a bad idea. It needs to be done. So I won't waste time debating that point. But what is aggravating is that the city wants us to pay for this with a new fee when there's plenty of money already existing in the budget to cover the cost. Just because the state statute says you can create a revenue structure doesn't mean that you must do so. If your financial statements show that you've been able to add $17 million to the reserves in the past last year to a total of over $25 million now, why can't you budget for this added expense? I see that you're able to budget for other priorities like loan payments on the new bond and hiring a whole bunch of new employees and providing them with fantastic benefit packages. My point is that I'm not confident that the city is being fiscally responsible, and I'm not 100% confident that this is something that you will contain. One commissioner said that this fee is revenue neutral. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out the math on that. If the city takes $45 from me every year, then I'm out $45 every year. On top of the 2 fees on the electric, on top of the fees on top of gas, on top of the fees on top of water, fees on top of fees, and they're not going to get stopped like this gentleman referred to with the turnpike. There is no end to this. The only way this goes is going up. The bottom line is that the city should pay for this out of the budget that's already in place. Are we going to be at risk of another senior center adjustment at the end of this if you can't quantify what the project actually entails, but you've figured out what the budget is? Is this like the senior center again, where it's like, oh, that was a budgetary number and now it's going up 50%? Please be responsible with our money.
Thank you. Next person? Sir, and then ma'am, you. That's all right.
Hi, good evening. My name's Jacques Broderick. I live at 39 Southeast 9th Avenue. Thank you, everybody, for...
If you could speak into the mic a little more, I'm sorry.
All right, no worries. Thank you, everybody, for your time and all the hard work with what you've been doing. I don't really care where the money comes from. I've got the $3, whatever it is, to hand over every month if that's what you guys decide on. The only thing I really need is you guys to decide on something quickly, because every time it rains, I'm out in the storm sewer or storm drain just cleaning it out. You can ask my neighbors. I was out there yesterday scraping it away so that I didn't get water in my front part of the house or in the back part of the house. You know, my neighbors don't need that either, so I'm out there trying to help them. But when it rains and I'm not home, who's going to do it? Because if I don't do it, my neighbors are going to get the water in their houses. So just figure something out pretty quickly amongst yourselves. That'll be great. That's all I need. Time. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. After the speakers, or someone else who'd like to speak? We have a few more? Okay. And just to be clear, if you'd like an additional minute, just request it, if you'd like one. Yes, ma'am.
No. Janet Netherlanden, 1320 Southeast 4th Street. I'd like to just clarify something. As far as I'm concerned, yesterday's rain was not a slight rain. My pool got more than 6 inches in it. Okay, I know that I agree we have flooding issues. We have a lot of red dots on that map. But none of those red dots, nothing's been said to see what the problem is, whether it's the infrastructures that's failed, whether it's clogs from garbage that has been thrown into the street that are clogging the drains. Nothing's been studied to show what's causing the problem. I think there really ought to be a study done first to show what's causing it. The man giving the presentation earlier, he's basing our fee, whatever you want to call it, on a single-family residence. And he's comparing us to other cities in the county. But he doesn't have a clue what they base their ERUs on. Is it based on square footage? Is it based on square footage per acreage? How much acreage is open? I mean, you're looking at condos and you're comparing them to a single-family residence. Yes, the square footage in a condo is small, but you're also not comparing with all the other amenities that they have on the property that are also concreted over, so we have no drainage. I think that needs to be looked at. I think that's an erroneous comparison. He's also stating that we need this because our road workers don't have the expertise to do this. But now, at the end of his presentation, he says he's going to take 4 personnel from the road and transfer them over to do stormwater. That's crazy. He's contradicting himself. I'm not a public speaker, so I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I think we've got to figure out what's wrong with ours and then figure out how to fix it. Creating a whole department, buying all equipment when our personnel don't know how to use it. Your best case scenario is going to hire an expert to do it. If you want to lay tile in your house, unless you know what you're doing, you don't do it yourself. You hire somebody that's got the tile cutting machines. You don't need to go and buy all the equipment. You hire somebody to do it. Have a good night, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you, ma'am. We have Ms. Massey.
Rita Massey, 349 Northeast 19th Avenue. The city of Deerfield Beach is on the verge of approving a new tax for the citizens called a stormwater tax. Everyone wants improvements to stormwater drainage. The question is it fair to expect the citizens to have to pay another tax for these improvements? Deerfield Beach should spend readily available dollars to improve our infrastructure, stormwater, and sewer system. The basic service should be provided by our existing tax dollars, and the city must prioritize funding for this from our $180 million budget. At a city commission meeting approximately 2 years ago, when asked what the city had paid in stormwater and sewer repairs in the last fiscal year, our finance director said the cost of operation for a city of this size is approximately $2 million. Lastly, our city has over $25 million in reserve, the highest total ever in the history of Deerfield Beach. We are only required to have $15 million in reserve. Use the reserve fund for the basic services for Deerfield Beach infrastructure, stormwater, and sewer system repairs. Set up the separate stormwater fund with money you have, not another tax. Remember, the fire assessment fee tax started out at $58 per year and has now increased to $178 per year. Remember how in 2012, the city implemented the public service tax, which was supposed to significantly reduce our property tax millage rate. The citizens got the savings for 2 years, and then the commission raised the rates right back up where they were before the tax began. Let's not get fooled again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sandra Jackson, 386 Southwest 35th Avenue. I say no to the stormwater tax. It's not a tax. Everybody's saying tax. From my understanding, it's a fee. Regardless, it's still a tax. My question is, over the years, what happened over those years with water being flooded? When I was growing up here as a little kid, we had flood where Arbor Jones a long time ago used to go clear out the flooding area. My question is, what happened? Did we maintain that area? That's what happened? It was not maintained, so now we're paying for it because you guys didn't do what you're supposed to do? So I'm saying no to the taxes. It's going to affect a lot of people. Where I live at right now, I don't have the problem of flooding. And I'm quite sure a lot of people in District 4 don't want this tax also with District 1, 2, and 3. You guys have the money, so use the money to get this done. Thank you.
Terry Scott, 624 Northwest 2nd Way. Wow. District 4 don't have flooding. District 2 been having it all my life. And how unfair. That rain yesterday flooded out a whole lot of Deerfield Beach, especially in District 2. It flooded us out, as always. I'm not here against or for this tax, because I believe the people have the right to say if they want to be taxed or not. And I pray every elected official hear their constituents on this issue. But my thing is, are we going to continue to allow this city to be in the place that it's at right now? No, I do not like to hear that great numbers of employees don't pay tax in this city. How unfair. Millions of dollars going out but not coming back into this city. How unfair. Yeah, this just started just a few years ago. How unfair to take our dollars and give them to another city. That is unfair to us. But we didn't think about this when we was giving firefighters big pensions to retire on. How unfair. Year after year, their fire pensions went up. They can live good off the pensions that our elected officials gave them. And now we talking about we don't want to be taxed. How unfair. This city is flooding. Everywhere you look, at least everywhere I look, city flooding. I was out there in that rain yesterday where we could not leave for 2 hours. How unfair. And it is. Many businesses flooding. We need to think about it. We need to think. Well, we do need to think about who we put in office also, if they're not going to hear us. We need to think about that. And then we need to think about the growth and the development of this city. This city is 91 years of age by incorporation and older than that. We have seen great pictures of Deerfield and how we have increased significantly. And yes, we got problems. And yeah, I called some mayors today in their cities to find out what they was doing with this drain water tax. And yes, many of them told me stories about their tax. But they also said, Terry, we are younger than Deerfield Beach. Mayor, if I could, please, that 1 minute.
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Yes, we do have a tax or a fee if we want to call it. But we also a younger city, and there were some things played when they was developing us. So our flooding is not a problem. Our drainage is good. Well, Deerfield, we can't say that. We're not. We are old city, and we do need some help. And I hope that you would take the advice of Don Lunderay and look in to having private companies come and at least consult us. Give us the best advice that we can give these to people. Again, Commissioners, Mayor, I would ask if we would please hear the heart of the people in their cry.
Thank you. Next. Yes, ma'am.
Denise Bogner, 1157 Southwest 26th Avenue. In my opinion, a fee of this nature is the best way to go. That money is set aside specifically for this infrastructure that we need. And yes, District 4 did flood yesterday. Military Trail was flooded. Penny Frantalo Street was flooded. Deer Run floods every time. So it's throughout our city. And I think the best way to move forward is to have a special fund set aside. When people are asking, where are these, hire this one, do that, make this investigation, you need the funds to do it. And I feel it's the best, as with other utility fees that we have, to put it aside specifically for this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey, my name is David Sabahe. I live in 41 Southeast 9 Terrace. I own a few duplexes on that street. In case you guys know, that street is the main street where the fire department, and this is where all the police cars getting gas, because they have their gas station. So it's that's the route. When we get flooded, nobody can get anywhere, and it happened often. And we're also sending pictures constant to the city about regarding that issue. That's one street west of US 1, right behind the pet supermarket. That's where we are.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public? Got one, two more? Okay.
Hello, Amy K. Tanner, Southeast Fifth 111 Southeast Fifth Avenue, Otis Tanner Way, Deerfield Beach. Historically speaking, we've had water problems before. We have information at our historical society that we have pictures of certain areas that flooded in 1970, and 1960, 1980, and yesterday. And it floods in District 1, it floods in District 2, and 3 and 4. There are certain areas. This is Florida, and we do have rain. A lot of people joke about Florida rain, about how it can, other places it rains and rains and rains. But in Florida, it just rains and goes away. Well, yesterday kind of was a rain and rain and rain. It rained quite a bit where I live. And I'm so thrilled that my area drains well. So there has to be a reason what makes a certain area drain well. We have to consider also the impact that flooding has on our streets. The gentleman just mentioned Ninth Court, and that I was on that street last night, and they've just repaired it. That had terrible potholes on Ninth Terrace and then on First Street. Huge, and they've just been fixed. Last night, when I left a club meeting, there was water standing in those areas. The water gets in, it undoes what we do to fix the problem, and then we have the problem again. I don't have an answer, and probably I shouldn't say anything because I can't offer an answer. but somewhere we're a product of our past. And if we look back of what happened in the past, the middle school, oh my goodness, when I was in middle school, it was just it's where the baseball stadiums are. It was just a huge area with portables all over it. And when it rained, you just stayed where you were until the rain went away. Now, when they have it, they have a sump, which is an area where water goes. Right by the middle school, that's the area where the walking catfish come from. I was just reading that article. I'll have to find it again. But we're a product of having water in our neighborhoods for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. Katie Freitag, 418 Southeast 2nd Street. The answer is not to take money out of the reserves, but to budget smartly to be able to provide for the repairs as needed. Emergency funds are just that, for emergency use only. These will be sole funds, and with sole funds, they cannot be used on any other items. These funds will be going into one set account that can only be used on stormwater and on nothing else. With that in mind, they cannot be used on roads, bridges, speed humps, or anything else as they have been in the past. This fee could be lowered at any time. It does not have to be the same amount all the time. It could be lowered. It does not have to stay exactly. As we make these repairs and do what we need to do, the fee can be reduced. As far as private enterprise, that costs money too. Unless the private company is going to do it for free, that's going to cost money as well. And as Tom said, he was going to be hiring an engineer to oversee this new department. I'm sure that new head will be taking care of training all of the employees coming from other departments on what they need to work on how to resolve these stormwater issues. I could not get home from the Women's Club meeting yesterday due to the fact of the rainstorm that we had. I forgot my ARC, but next time I'll make sure to bring it with me. If this fee is going to fix the issue, I'm all for it, and I will be the first one to write my check.
Thank you. Former state representative.
Gwendolyn Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way, Deerfield Beach. Former commissioner, former vice mayor, former state representative. And I say that to say this. We have had issues with water in this city, storm water, as it's now referred to. And if those of you who will remember, and as Amy has said, history tells a lot about a city. You know that when there were other commissioners up here on this dais, those that spoke the loudest and those that roared the most got what was needed for their districts. We know that there were water issues, and we know that some districts got drainage repairs, other districts did not. We know that what has happened on Southwest 14th and 14th Street and Southwest 15th Street, going back by the high school. All of that was repaired recently. And I say recently, I would say within the past 10 years, there was work done there. But what has happened is the streets been resurfaced. The drains have not been cleaned as they should be. I've called the city several times to get the drains on the streets cleaned, and other residents, I guess, will have to do the same thing. But we definitely need to do something about the stormwater runoff. And if forming this stormwater fund, this enterprise fund, and it can only be used to deal with the drainage and the stormwater runoff, I'd say at this time, we need to go ahead and do it. And let's move forward in this city. Because what is happening, there are developments that are coming along that are taking up the land, the vacant land where the water would be absorbed through the land. Now we're going to have buildings there. And we need to do something immediately about this, because it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public care to comment on this item? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioner Parnas.
Riding around this city after it rains, every district has a problem. And it's about time we looked the problem square in the face and said, hey, we have a problem that needs to get fixed. If we had a rash of armed robberies and needed extra police to protect ourselves, there wouldn't be a question about it. We would need the police. Thank God we happen to have a very effective police department, and crime has been down. But flooding has not been down. And as I listen to you, the public, those who have flooding are for it. Those that don't have flooding are against it. But I ask all of you to do one thing. Forget your district. This is a city. If District 2 has flooding, it affects my life and yours. If District 4 has flooding, it affects your life as well as theirs. We have a problem. This solution to the problem is pinpointed for a separate fund directed at fixing this problem. One of the speakers said the city's 90 years old. How old are some of the sewer pipes? 60, 70, before records were kept? We're not even sure where they are. We have to find them. And they have to be replaced with modern technology. The EPA is demanding more out of us in the way we treat sewer water before it goes to the ocean. I am proud that the Commission is looking at this issue as a citywide problem that needs to be fixed now, not 10 years down the road. We could all be underwater by then. How long before these pipes totally decay and cause havoc in the streets? So let's be adults. We're not asking for $1 million here. This is a separate fund to fix a specific problem unless you want to be underwater. And I particularly do not want to be underwater. And I don't want to see our island out there near the beach totally flooded to a point where people lose homes and buildings. And it's only getting worse, not better. Flooding has to stop. And I urge the Commission to pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor Battle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is, and my colleague out there said that this city is 90-plus years old, and that is true. And based on the 90-plus years, I think I've been here like 68. So I know that the pipes underneath are at least 68 years old. Let me tell you what happened over in my district a couple of months back. It started as one pipe bursting, and we ended up having to fix the pipes at 4 different houses. What we started out doing using city staff cost us about $10,000+. When we brought in private enterprise then, that money escalated all the way up to $100,000+ just to fix the pipes at those 4 houses. That is unacceptable for a city of this size. We should have something in place so that we can deal with the issue. And I understand what the gentleman said about the private enterprise or whatever, but it's been my experience, and I've been with government a long time. We get them in one time, it's one cost. Don't let it be a contract. It steadily escalates. So what we could have done in-house with a stormwater fee, if we let it out, basically, it's going to cost us more in the long run. And you say get it, or there are people who say take it from the general fund. Not a good thing. Take it from the reserves. The reserves are there for a reason. They're reserves. They're called that for a reason. We must have those in place. So it would be irresponsible of us to deplete our reserves in order to try to fix the stormwater problem in this city. And I sit here and I've heard from both sides of people in my community, not only those of here tonight, that are here tonight, but people who are out there. And the overall concern is that we get it done, and we get it done now. Even the school system, Deerfield Park, was not even exempt from that rain. And I call it a slight rain, simply because I've been in worse. That yesterday to me was small. That was a slight rain, considering what we have to deal with. And when I tried to get out of my own house, and I can't do this, and this is before I sat here, I came to the city and said, look, you got to do something about that, about the drainage in my area. I can't even get past out of my own neighborhood. They did come in and they put in a French drain. I don't know what that was all about. I still don't know. But they put in a drain. It's not working, undoubtedly, or it did not work, or has not worked. So it's no secret here tonight, based on hearing from my residents then, when I cast a vote, it's going to be for the stormwater fee.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Drosky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first want to thank the residents and businesses for coming out tonight and sharing your opinion and engaging in the debate process. We're a better representative form of government when our residents and businesses civilly participate in the process. So I want to thank you for doing that. At the first reading, for those that were here, realize and understand that I was a no vote, and I will remain a no vote tonight. I was quoted after that meeting as saying that I was not 100% convinced, and that is true, but I wanted to use tonight to expand and explain that a little bit more. During the last meeting, I wrote down no less than 8 singular points in favor of the stormwater. They're all compelling, and I think no matter what, the stormwater management plan has to go forward after tonight, win, lose, or draw. However, during this entire process, this has been a months-long process. This is not a one-time event here. This has been going on for many months here in our city. We've had workshops, we had a first reading, there was actually a stormwater presentation at an initial meeting. So this is nothing new information. I was out in the community during the last 3 months at probably over at least, I didn't keep track, it had to be at least over 24 different associations, communities, homeowners associations, you name it, talking about the stormwater fee. And what I came to realize at the end of this process was that there's some communities in our city that have private systems. Those private systems tie in to the city system, but they maintain them themselves. And in my opinion, it's just not equitable for those communities to pay the same rate as the other communities that we have here in our city. You know, quite frankly, folks, I mean, there comes a time when you just have to side with the minority on a particular position. And those communities needed representation. They asked me to represent, and that's what I'm doing tonight. When I got elected, I told everybody we may not agree. Tonight is one of those nights. But we're doing it civilly, we're doing it rationally, and we're doing it based on facts, and we're basing it upon the comments of our residents that we hear out there in the community. I have been, however, working with the city manager and staff to rectify what I find is a flaw in that ordinance, to try and see what can we do for these private systems in these communities. And I heard tonight a business owner talk about this may be an issue for the businesses as well in our city with private systems. Unfortunately, this is a very complicated problem. This isn't something that you can gloss over in a matter of minutes. And staff and I have not come to a written solution on this particular matter. It's still being debated. And quite frankly, I want the opportunity to take whatever solution we come up with back to the communities and present it to them as this is a potential solution to the problem that I see as part of this ordinance. I look forward to continue working with the city manager and staff to come up with a solution so that maybe we can present this later so that we can all be happy. You know, there has to be compromise somewhere in what we do up here. Maybe we can find that middle ground. So much like one of my colleagues was the sole no vote on the Crystal Lake Golf Course because he wanted to represent the interests of those in the minority there. And that's what I'm doing here tonight. So as I respected his opinion at the time for representing the minority, I request the same tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Good, can you come back up to address a couple questions? Where are you? Thank you. First off, the question that came up about businesses and they're paying into maintaining their own stormwater. I believe the ordinance addresses this, but if you could clarify that for them?
Sure. So the issue is that some of these facilities get what they call a stormwater management permit from the county, and the county requires them to ensure that their systems are operating henceforth. They have what they call 5-year permit cycles and things like that. These systems that are installed do not disconnect these facilities from the city's facilities. As I made a big reference here, one of the biggest things that drive us to is the water quality component. And if these systems are not containing 100% of the stormwater onto their property and they are discharging into the city system, the city is responsible then to ensure that that water quality is meeting the NPDES and EPA standards and things. Some of these systems are built such that they just attenuate. They don't hold water necessarily onto the property when it reaches a certain elevation or what we call a storm level. You know, you can have 1-year storm, 5-year storm, 10-year storms, 100-year storms, and some of these systems are designed at different varying levels. So we did incorporate into the ordinance an opportunity for folks to submit a application for credit. Now, but looking at what the impact is not a straightforward linear evaluation. There's many factors that have to go and take into consideration when you're looking at how does a private system, so to say, how much does it really retain, how much does it really attenuate, how much does it really discharge, and that application process will determine, you know, what that credit is, and that level of credit could be varying. It could be, you know, I'm just going to say it off the cuff, like 10%, it could be 50%. I don't know what it is until they enter that process.
So it's case by case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The other question I'd like answered, if you could clear this up, someone made a comment regarding the city water supply being out of compliance with the EPA for 36 months. Is that accurate? Can you go into detail on that?
So that is what is shown on the EPA website is what it is. However, we are anticipating a letter from the EPA that identifies the fact that there was a problem with their system and how that was reported, and that we have received from our local health department confirmation that we have not been any violation. There was an initial violation at the very, 36 months ago or 36 quarters ago, whatever that was. And the fact is that when they enter that information into the system, listen, people make errors, computer system make errors, and that's sort of what happened to this process, and we're anticipating a letter from the EPA or the DEP very, very soon for that.
So for the last 36 months, we've been in compliance?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, one more time?
Yes, sir, we sure have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted that clarified. Okay. Couple of points in this. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that, Mr. Good. Just a couple of points in this. I think everyone agrees that something needs to be done. I don't think there's anybody that stood up here and said, well, we don't have a flooding issue, or we don't need to address the issues that we have with our infrastructure when it comes to how we deal with stormwater. And this is a combination of things. This is not a matter of a system that's falling apart completely in all areas of the city. This is a wide variety of reasons why we are considering this and moving this forward. And part of it is that we do have an aging infrastructure. The infrastructure is, some of it is not there, but it is approaching its end-of-life stage. I think most people know that. I think that's reasonable, and that most people understand that. There are other areas of the city that haven't been right for decades. They just haven't been right. As was pointed out, we talk about history. We talk about there's a history of flooding here in the city of Deerfield Beach. There are areas that were built many years ago and really weren't built to deal with the kind of capacity that has come forward with development around the city. I have no explanation for that, other than it could be gross negligence, it could be oversight, it could be just the fact that things were built a long time ago and they weren't prioritized to be fixed or upgraded to a certain level. So on top of that, we have environmental changes that are putting an extra burden on the city when it comes to dealing with stormwater, as well as unfunded mandates that come down from the federal government and the state government. And that's only going to increase. So partially this decision is proactive, but it's also reactive because we've had a problem for a long time. So we're anticipating, knowing that we're reaching end of life on a lot of this infrastructure, and while today it might be some areas of District 1 and District 2, which might be the older areas of the city, in the next upcoming years, I have no doubt it'll be District 3 and District 4. It's simply what you have to do. This infrastructure has an end of life cycle, and it needs to be replaced and repaired, and the burden falls on the city to try to take care of that. I sent staff a slide. Can you bring up, before we do that, I think the real issue here is how do you pay for it? And there are people who suggested we have plenty of money and we should go to our reserves. There is and Eric, it looks like this. This is the millage rate and total fund balance chart I have here. So this is our total fund balance. If you could just highlight in the bottom area of it, the blue, if you could kind of bring that up there. So it might be a little difficult for you to read, but as you can see, that's the trend. That's the way things have been since 2000. If you look at 2001, our reserves were $970,000. That's amazing. So when people talk about, well, our reserves are at an all-time level and we need to start dipping into that, and that what happened back in 2011, 2012, 2010, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and we'll never be in that situation. I don't know how they can explain where the situation we were in back in 2000, 2001, and 2002. This is not a chart right here to show where our fund balance is. This is not what I would call responsible government. It needs to be steady. It needs to be available. And God forbid we did get hit with hurricanes in 2012 or 2013 to the tune of what we were hit with Wilma. Wilma was $14 million that the city was hit with. Now, people ask the question, why do other cities that have these stormwater fees, why do they have lower millage rates than us? Well, part of the reason they have lower millage rates is because they have an extra fee, and they've had it for decades, in place that allows them to bill separately for that infrastructure. They haven't been having to do what we've had to do, which is pull from the general fund in order to pay for that. They've also had a utility tax in place for decades, that they've had the ability to have a more steady revenue stream than what the city of Deerfield Beach has. Because our taxes collected, 2007 it was $41 million, I believe that is correct. In 2012, just 5 years later, it dropped down to $27 million collected. That's because the bottom fell out of the market. That's stunning. Our costs didn't go down. Our ability to provide services certainly changed, but we still had to provide the same level of service 5 years after that high peak and do it quickly. That's devastating for a city that is too dependent on property values for the revenue. The goal here is and should be, and the reason that I have not said we will lower the millage rate because we're putting this in place, I'm not going to guarantee that. We've been there, done that before. We talked about that with utility tax. We were able to lower it. But if you look, if you look at the top part now with our millage rate, we haven't had a millage rate increase since 2014. We've had one decrease since 2014. You can see the dip in which it dropped. But if you look at 2008, 2009, that's when the city decided to do a significant decrease in the millage rate and went from it was 6.69 in 2006. By 2008, they dropped it to 5.35 because at that point their fund balance was skyrocketing. When it hit, if you go back to the fund balance chart, when it hit its peak at 23.4, if you look what happened, that's when the bottom fell out of the market and we had to start pulling from the reserves, and then we had to make some other cost-cutting moves to do that. The utility tax was put in place. We changed our millage rate. We were able to do it for 2 years, but quite frankly, it wasn't sustainable. We didn't give it enough time to kind of put ourselves on steady footing. So I'm not going to promise that, but I can tell you this, the end goal should be to lower the millage rate because you're less dependent on it. You have another fee that will help you pay for this, so you're not pulling from your general fund. And you have a dedicated source. When I said that it's dedicated source, it's pure transparency, I didn't say that by saying we don't have transparency in other areas, but this is clean and easy, and for most laymen, they can pretty much understand it. You get charged a fee, and this is what you're getting for it. Stormwater fee goes directly into this. Very easy to follow, very clean and simple. Everything else is transparent as well, but it's complicated because, I'm sorry, government is complicated, and that's what happens. This type of business model, like I said, is not the way to go. We will reach a point that the money that's going into our reserves will be put back to the residents as far as the lowering of the millage rate. That should be the goal, and that's where we're headed. If you look at what happened with our garbage fees, we haven't had a garbage fee increase in I can't tell you how long, but we did have a decrease. We had a significant decrease when our tipping rates changed. We were able we were charged less, so we were able to pass that savings on to the citizens, and that's what we've done consistently. There hasn't been a water rate increase since 2008. Our millage right now is actually at the same rate that it was back in, right now it is at 6.5007. The last time, in 2002, that's actually lower than what it was back in 2002. It's gone higher. I think it reached a peak at 6.69. It's now at 6.65. It should continue to go down. The bottom line is, how are we going to pay for this? We all agree that it needs to be paid for. To me, the smartest thing to do is to make the tough decision. Nobody wants to pay an extra fee. I get it. It's $3.50 a month, cup of coffee. That might have a heavier impact than others, but I can tell you this. Doing a straight rate for everybody when it comes to single-family homeowners is a lot more fair than it is for charging those that have a higher priced home because they bought it the wrong time, and those who have a lower cost home. It's equal pay for equal service. It's strange that I have a house next to me that pays a lot more taxes than I do, even though we're identical homes practically, we're right next to each other. They bought it at a different time than I did. They get charged a higher rate than I do. All right. A lot of people talk about when we see this dip that happened with the market. One of the things we learned from the property appraiser's office, if you're homesteaded, it's 3% is the maximum that you can be taxed on your home if you're homesteaded. That's not exactly accurate because it's also compared to it's either 3% or it's the consumer price index. Consumer price index, whichever is lower, is what the maximum that you can go up in. Last 2 years, it's been 2.1%, maximum that your taxes could go up on the value of your home. Doesn't matter that blip, and you say your home was at $300,000, that blip hit, we dropped it, the value dropped down to $150,000, and 2 years later, you're back at 300, you're probably at 400 right now. The 150 is your new normal, and it's 3% or the consumer price index, whichever is lowest, is the maximum you can go back up. Everybody right there, that's devastating for a city. It's great for a single-family homeowner. If you're a non-homesteaded and you're a commercial property, it's 10% is the max that it can go up. I hear people complaining, well, my taxes have gone up, my taxes have gone up. Well, there's a reason, because the millage rate hasn't changed other than go down since 2014. What has happened is the value of your home and your property has gone up. If you're not homesteaded here in the city of Deerfield Beach, yes, your taxes are going to be different than those that are. And that's just the way it works. But we cannot continue to be so dependent on our property taxes, considering that Deerfield Beach has one of the lowest median prices in Broward County. I think 230, I believe, is the median in Broward County. We're at 160, right? Do you think we can go ahead and increase revenue that can make up for that in a short amount of time? You can't. It doesn't work that way, not when the maximum you can go up is 3% on a homesteaded property. So I think this is a fair and equitable way to go about things. I do understand that we have entities within this city and outside of this city, private entities that can come in and give us an idea of what needs to be done, and they can actually do it themselves, but that's not going to be free. That's going to cost money. I do agree with what people are saying. I don't like, I'm glad that we lowered the rate, because I don't feel we needed to push it to that point, because we weren't quite sure what our projects were going to be. But I can tell you this to give you an idea, and how it's not unreasonable with what we're charging and with that money we're going to put aside. The Kingfisher Canal project, we've already sunk money into it, and by the end phase of what we're going to do on one pipe is $500,000. What do you think it's going to take to fix some of these major flooding issues we have in other neighborhoods? It's going to be much more than that, all right? This initial stage, the first year, the money that comes in is going to be used towards a study. So when you say, well, why not the first year? Why don't you just take in $500,000, do your study, and that's it? Because in year two, when we're taking in, what is it, $2.5 million? Is that what we're looking at? Year two, I can promise you, whatever projects come forward, they're going to cost you more than $2.5 million. So why not start in the first year? You've got money put aside, so come second year, you probably got about $4 million to start putting a significant dent in some of your infrastructure problems. We do need to have a plan. We need to understand where the issues are. It's not this is not a unique problem to this city if you don't know all the plans and where all the pipes go. I can tell you it's a South Florida problem. When you try to do old public records from the 70s and 80s, look for some deed transfers. When you have people whose homes they've had since the 50s and 60s, and their loved ones come in after they pass, and they have a change of ownership, and they're looking for old information on the home, it doesn't exist. You're lucky if you find anything from the 70s and 80s on microfiche. Anybody remember what that is? But then you've had flooding in the problem, I think about 15 years ago, that wiped out some records. The county has the same exact problem. Go down to the county records and ask for something from the 1960s on a property. Good luck. It's a crapshoot. Not saying it's right, but I'm not saying it's unique to Deerfield Beach. That's a true problem. I understand with what my colleague is saying as far as saying no to this, because we have some private companies or private neighborhoods that have that are paying separately. I've asked for that to be put in here to give give consideration to them, and obviously it sounds like you've been working on that as well, to figure out a way we can give them a break, just like the businesses would have a break. Can't tell you exactly what that amount would be, but you can apply to have a credit given towards this. $45 a year for the next 5 years is what's being asked to do this. I don't think it's an unreasonable amount. I certainly think it's fair, and it's certainly needed. I respect everybody's opinion on this. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. You talk about, well, there's projects and people don't live in the city and salaries and all that. All of that isn't talking about the real core issue of this. We need to figure out a way to fund long-term major projects within the city when it comes to our stormwater fee, our stormwater. This is not a tax, it is a fee. There is a technical reason why we refer it. The bottom line is, call it what you want, It's an increase in money that we're asking from the citizens. But I think people are split on it. I understand it and I respect it, but I believe it's the right thing to do. We are up here to make the tough decisions. If others in the past wanted to make the politically convenient decisions to kick the can down the road, well, the road has come to an end and the can's at the end right now. I'm willing to take the beating from those of you who don't think we should do this to set us up better in the future, to take care of and improve this city. So I'm not going to take the easy way out, and I think the easy way out would be to say no to this. And that's not saying, I respect your opinion on it, and I'm saying you're taking the easy way out. I think you have your justifications, but I'm looking at the city as a whole, and I think this is the best way to go. I understand your point. I think you're doing the right thing, Commissioner, and I mean it with full respect. I'm not trying to take a shot by any means. Because this is a good civil debate, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate the feedback from the residents on this as well. This is what we need. It certainly has changed the way this was first going to be introduced. The amount is different. I do have some concerns, and I hope staff can come back up and answer these. When it comes to the 4 transfers, the 2 maintenance positions, and the 1 engineer, Mr. Good? Is that, or I guess City Manager, you can answer this. The 1 engineer, is that a current staff member, or is that going to be a new hire?
Well, it will be a new hire, but it is a current position that will be partially funded out of the stormwater utility fund, but the majority of the funding will come out of the utilities fund, which is your water, wastewater. So that position is not currently filled, but hopefully in the next few weeks, we will be filling it with a qualified engineer.
Before we do that, do we have the ability to use our own engineering or potentially outsource that work to be done so we have more money going towards the actual projects and less money going towards, I understand we need oversight on this. Certainly when you have projects this large, you need some oversight, but do we have the ability to do that?
Well, of course, we have the ability to use private companies at any time, like what we've certainly recommended in the past with the building inspections or other areas. So certainly with projects, we'll look to see whether or not it's more cost efficient and effective to actually use a private entity. But we certainly want to have a person that's in-house that's overseeing this. And again, the breakdown of the salary, Mr. Good, I'm not sure if you can quote it off the top of your head, but it's probably like 75 or 80% utility, and then the rest would be covered by stormwater and potentially general fund dollars for any work that that person or position may do that's not related to utilities or stormwater. By law, we do have to pay for that out of the general fund. But most of the work is within utilities, or in this case, it also stormwater.
Okay. I would like to see us move more in the direction of starting slow and only bringing in what we need, as opposed to taking on a full department with full staff until we know exactly what the projects are.
Yeah. If it would please the City Commission, if I could just have Mr. Good talk
Sure.
a little bit about the current personnel and what he was talking about with the transfer of road and bridge versus our infrastructure management personnel into stormwater, and because they are actually very competent and very skilled. They can operate heavy equipment and street sweepers, things of that nature. Thank you.
Okay.
So the current staff that we have are they're part-time stormwater operators, so to say. The biggest concern that we have right now is the fact that the resource availability.
Talking to the mic more, I'm sorry.
Can you hear that? Hello?
Yeah.
So our issue is not competency, it's the resource availability of the staff to do the stormwater stuff.
So essentially, you're asking current staff to wear multiple hats, because right now, the stormwater that we're taking care of is really on a maintenance basis as opposed to a major project basis?
Correct. And even major maintenance, for instance, I mean, they'll go and they'll clean a drain, but to go and clean out a pipe and TV it and to confirm whether or not it's structurally with integrity, we're not capable of doing that. And that's what this operation and maintenance department will be doing. They'll be dedicated full-time to doing things like that, because we do know that we have some pipes, but we just don't know what the conditions are, and we don't have the resource availability to be able to go out there and do a detailed look and to identify, hey, is this pipe breaking? Do we need to have it replaced? Can we get it lined? And all those other things.
Okay, thank you. City Manager?
Yes, just before you sit back down, Tom, or Mr. Good, can you also talk a little bit, and I'll actually set it up for you, where I think it needs to be clarified for not only the City Commission, but also for the public. When we're talking about equipment, this is not equipment that we just use from 8 to 5 during normal business operations, or where we could go rent it. This is like a vac truck, for instance. If there's severe flooding somewhere, we're going to send that truck out at midnight with a crew attached to it. You know, you don't necessarily get that quickly with private contractor, and it certainly would not be cheap. But we always look at, is it more cost effective to do it in-house or out of house, or a hybrid? And we use hybrid models throughout the city in parks maintenance, fire rescue, or not fire rescue, I'm sorry, building, things of that nature in the planning department. So it's not out of the realm that we would use a private entity for some of that, but you do need some level of equipment, and I think Hurricane Irma proved that, because we were one of the first cities, because we do have in-house solid waste, curbside pickup and bulk pickup, that we were able to respond within a couple of days to begin picking up, while other cities it was a couple weeks or longer before they started. So you want to talk a little bit about the equipment, street sweeping, things of that nature, please?
Sure. So having that equipment available, certainly during emergency operations, it does value us, because those same pieces of equipment all of a sudden become non-existently available to us, even through a contract. Much of some of the utilization that we would do for, particularly with the vacuum truck and as well as with the street sweeper, one of the things we've also found too is that if they're deployed on a regular basis, I don't mean like they just do it once or twice a week. If it's deployed 5 times a week, it becomes a much more cost-effective operation than having a contractor come in, because we are able then to do economy of scales on those operations in-house, as opposed to which make it better than the economy of scales that a contractor is capable of doing, because they still have bottom lines that they're dealing with. And street sweeping, we were able to confirm that by almost a 3-to-1.
Thank you. To go back to one other point, if you could show that general fund balance again. I understand what everybody's saying who is against this, and they say pull from the reserves. I think if you look at this trend, you see the upside down right around 2012, 2011, 2013, and actually more specific, even in 2015. We had people, citizens, telling us our first priority should be to improve our Fitch rating, the downgrade that we got, to improve that and improve our reserves. That's what everybody was crying. These are emails from back during that time period. One of the strongest opponents against this back in 2015 was saying we have approximately $13 million in reserves. We should be at least $30 million. We have people saying that the reserves, because this was noted in the actual Fitch fund balance, they talked about this, that our failure to meet our fund balance target, yes, 15% is the bare minimum, but we shouldn't be at the bare minimum, especially when you have major issues that can hit you. This is what people were saying all back during this time period of 2013, 2014, 2015. The city was responsive. You cannot turn this around on a dime. As soon as we heard it loud and clear, and that was our #1 priority. I think it's a little unbelievable, and not, well, I guess not unbelievable, but it's disappointing that as soon as we hit that mark and get us back on the right track and where we need to be, everybody wants to start rating it again. If history tells us anything, I promise you, if we start doing that, 5, 8 years from now, people are going to be saying, how did you start rating the reserves, and why did you do that? This up and down yo-yo on your general fund reserves is not a good practice. You have people who say, well, why wasn't it prioritized, and just put money aside and you can pull it from the general fund. The general fund, you're competing with all other projects within this city. One of the good things about this enterprise fund and having it specific to these projects is the prioritization will always be about stormwater for that money. It won't be about spending it on something else. And if you don't believe that things can turn on a dime or things can happen, decisions that are made up here cause that to happen. It wasn't that long ago that we had someone sitting in this seat that said, out of the blue, let's sell our fire station on the corner of Federal and Hillsborough. Let's sell that property. We didn't have a plan for a new fire station. We didn't know how much that was going to cost. The maximum amount we were going to get was approximately $3 million. It would have cost that probably twice that to replace it. So what were we really gaining? And if the commission had acquiesced to that and gone down that path, that would have been a sudden hit that we would have had to come up with several $1 million to pay for a new fire station out of the blue that we weren't prepared for. Sullivan Park, we'd already put in probably $1.5 million into that project, and we had somebody new come on board and said, I want to stop the Sullivan Park project in its tracks despite how much money we'd spent and refocus that money in a different area. Former state representative talked about how in the past the loudest voices got what they needed for their areas. That happened with prioritization in this city. And it happened not that long ago when people were trying to change the priority, have us go in a different direction. This commission, even the past commission, was dedicated and stuck to what was requested by the citizenry, which was to get our reserves back up and improve our ratings. We have the best ratings we've had, I think, in the history of the city of Deerfield Beach right now. We've accomplished that. Right now, we need to address this. It's not prudent for us to pull it out of the general fund. It's the fair thing to do to go with a utility tax, or excuse me, a stormwater fee. Commissioner Miller, you had your light on before?
Yes. Mayor, I thank you, because I think you did a very good job explaining why you're in favor of this. My fellow commissioners that
Sorry it was so long, but
spoke in favor of it, I thank you for taking your time. Maybe Todd will listen and think some more before he casts his vote. Listen, I've listened to 21 people speak. 3 people I didn't know what side they were on. 8 people were for it, and the 6 against it, or whatever that else. But bottom line is, it's a divided house. No, nothing is divided. The common theme with everybody is our infrastructure needs to be fixed. Amy says you learn from history. Yeah, I can tell you what history has done. As the city has gotten older, the commissions have not been willing to make this hard decision. They've just kicked the can, kicked the can, kicked the can. Now we're 91 plus years old, and there's no more kicking the can. We have people that can't even get in their houses when it rains. Somebody's lived there her whole life said that wasn't a big rain. So for those people, one of our primary ways to get money is ad valorem taxes. Those people that can't get in their houses, their value of their house is going down. And their quality of life is going down. And we're supposed to represent the whole city, and we're letting some people's house go underwater. We've got a man out here that gets out with a shovel and cleans the drain so his neighbors don't get flooded. Listen, it's got to be done. And it's not to be I think there's wisdom in having a dedicated income stream that's totally transparent, can only be spent on this. We cannot kick this can down the road any longer. It needs to be done, and we need to make the hard decision to do it. And there is a reason that 22 other cities have done it. 2/3 of this county have already done it. And approximately 50% of the cities in this county have lower millage rates than us. Do you think there might be a correlation? If there's any hope of our millage rate to go down, we need to get a diversified system of income. And that is the truth. So I am for this for all the reasons stated, and I'm not going to kick the can down the road. I'm going to vote for this, and I want us hopefully to prioritize. We're willing, when we decide after that study that the critical areas we might be able to solve their problem with private enterprise that are in our neighborhood that employ Deerfield Beach workers. If they can alleviate some of this flooding quickly, it might cost a little bit more, but these people can't even walk out of their houses. So the critical areas, I would not be opposed to looking at a company that is an international company right in our backyard. So I wouldn't exclude them when it comes to some of our critical areas. They have expertise, and sometimes you don't have to rethink it. I mean, it's right here in your backyard. And of course, they want to take care of their own neighborhood. They live here. They're not going to charge the same as they charge in New Orleans. They don't have to move their equipment as far. I believe they're good neighbors. But listen, this is time to make the hard decision. This is time to have a steady stream of money to fix our aging plumbing of the city for the stormwater. So I would like to make a motion to pass this.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky?
No.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Parnes?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Battle?
Yes.
Mayor Gantz?
Yes.
Next item is the resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach approving and adopting a schedule of stormwater utility rates attached to Exhibit A, effective October 1, 2018, establishing the value of an equivalent residential unit, providing for implementation, providing for severability, conflict, and an effective date.
Go to public.
It's just a companion to what you said.
This is a companion. It says this is not a second reading.
It's a resolution.
Okay. Anyone from the public care to comment on this item?
Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. I see that you're taking $500,000 from the utility fund, and then over the 4 years on the budget, you are repaying $600,000 from the utility fund. So why is there a $100,000 difference unless the utility fund is charging interest to the stormwater fund? So something is wrong there. Also, other than Kingfisher Canal, what other projects are included in line item number 60-31? The other thing is, I keep hearing from Hazen and Sawyer and also from city officials that this rate was set on something called administrative ease and assigning equitable cost. So could somebody explain how a small, modest, older home in District 2 has the same fee as a multi-million-dollar mansion on the Intracoastal? Thank you.
I believe part of that comes in the fact that it doesn't matter where you're at, the water all goes to the same place. It doesn't matter the size or the, excuse me, not necessarily the size, but the value of your property. It has more to do with equal and fair fee for the same service. Yes, sir.
John Slattery, 1455 Southeast 5th Place. So I still feel like this is not fully baked. I don't understand how you can say you're going to put in all this infrastructure, you're going to pay all these salaries and do all that, and fit it all within this budget, and then talk about outsourcing some of it to Moving Water Industries or another private company, because that,
If it's wisdom, if it's
because that can't
wise.
fit into the budget if you've
Let-
already
let-
got
let
the
him speak, please.
infrastructure in place and you're paying the employees, unless you're going to lay the employees off and then bring Moving Water Industries in. It doesn't make sense. This doesn't seem like it's fiscally thought all the way through. You can't talk about how you're going to do this $2 million a year, but then talk about it at the same time, you know, hey, these costs are outrageous. It costs $500,000 to do one thing for Kingfisher Canal. How does that fit into the budget if you're talking about $2 million per year? I don't feel like this is logical. I don't feel like it's thought all the way through. And what happens at the end of 5 years? We talk about this being a 5-year plan. Is this set to end in 5 years and it all goes away? What do you do with the employees and the infrastructure then? And I think it's a really good question about you're borrowing $500,000, but you're paying back $6. Are we paying interest on our own money?
Yes, ma'am.
Since I own MWI, I just felt like I should say something. I'm not here to try to get the job. I just think there's a lot of misinformation. I fully support fixing stormwater issues. I'm an environmental engineer. I'm a PE registered in the state of Florida, and I love water, stormwater, master's degree in water. So I just feel like there's a misunderstanding that I feel like everyone should get cleared up, that stormwater, and Hazen and Sawyer can confirm this as well, is not solved by fixing just infrastructure. It's not an infrastructure issue, and all the water that gets collected in stormwater pipes actually goes to the ground a lot of times or evaporates. So if you're talking about collecting things or storing them, or there's stormwater retention ponds or detention ponds or all these other structures that have to be part of your stormwater plan. So don't just view it as a machinery that can get done and fixed and solve the problem. It really has a lot to do with your planning and zoning. There's overdevelopment, and I'll tell you, and there's trees that are also, the poor guy who's raking the leaves out of his drain, my mom does the same thing every single storm. It has nothing to do with the fact she doesn't have a stormwater drain. The drain is right on her property. The problem has to do with the tree that's there, and all the leaves drop and it blocks the drain. So I think it just needs to be, whoever you hire in the future, whatever engineer you hire, is going to need to look at the whole comprehensive solution. It's not just infrastructure. It's not just lack of land. It's not just, there's a tree problem. There could be all different issues, elevation issues. There are areas that flood normally anyway, and sometimes you just can't correct those. So don't build on those. Or just driveways that we allow in the city to make impervious. Why not require people, all new buildings, to have pavers that solve some of your impervious area? Not completely, but it does alleviate it. So other counties that you can also look at, by the way, like Indian River County, their water table depth is 6 inches below the ground. But they require every single homeowner to maintain their own stormwater property. They won't even let them live in the property unless they can maintain it, unless they're in a community that has their own stormwater plan. So there's so many options to consider, but I really think there's a lot of misinformation. It's not just equipment malfunctioning. It's not pipes aging. It's not all that stuff. There's a lot more to it. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you. Someone else in the public?
This is like a done deal.
I'd like to make a little prediction. Joe Hines, 559 Northwest 47th Terrace.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a prediction on the fee, whatever you folks decide the fee is going to be on an annual basis, that in 10 years from now, that fee will be triple what it originally is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to close it to the public then. I will say this, that there's a reason why the very first step that we're doing here is the master plan. You're right, there is more to this, and there are different solutions that need to be looked at, which is why I do share the concern about bringing in staff when we're not fully there yet. So I caution management to move slowly on that until we know where the plan is and where it takes us. Regardless of where it takes us, we know we will need the money, and if that money is spent on staff, whether it be private or internal staff, the money will be there to put towards stormwater. So if let's say we decide to not put it towards full-time staff and we put it in another area, it will still go toward more money towards the project. So the master plan is the very first step. For those of you who think that once this is passed, that suddenly the flooding is going to go away in your front yard, I got to be honest with you, that's not what's going to happen, but this is the first step in getting it solved and with long-term solutions. So that's really it.
So, in light of what you just said, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this.
Second. Before we do, Commissioner Drosky, you had a comment?
I mean, so having been on the short stick of the previous debate, I think it's prudent for at least me in District 4 to participate in the rate conversation. The study and the Kingfisher Canal alone are going to, I mean, we're not talking about a huge sum of money. It's $2.2 million in year one. So you're talking at least half of that for the Kingfisher Canal and the study right out of the bat. So I can go along with it for year one, but I would advise my colleagues that this is something that we should revisit every year. That it's not something that we should just rubber stamp this for the next 5 years, that we should revisit it every year and see how it's progressing. Because I would like to see, to monitor to see if it can go down in the future, or conversely, if the study makes the situation worse than anyone anticipated, then perhaps the other way. But it's something that I think we need to follow as this progresses along. So I'm at ground zero. It's a restart for me on this issue. So having said that, I mean, I think if it's going forward and it has passed, then year one, I'm looking at the charts now, then I don't think those numbers are unreasonable given the known quantities. And yes, by the way, it does flood in District 4. We are not immune to flooding out there as well. There are known areas in District 4 as well. So I hope my no vote tonight doesn't preclude District 4 from sharing in some of the projects going forward.
You didn't tell them?
So can we?
With that, it's my understanding that that this does not lock us in at that set rate, that there is the ability, as we come up with the plan, that we have the ability to lower, or as Commissioner Drosky said, to go in a different direction.
Yeah. Yes, to address Commissioner Drosky's question, absolutely. This is actually not a department. It is a division of a department that is within environmental services. So like every other department and division in the June workshops, we will go through what the plans or recommendations are. And then at that time, if the city commission says we want to do more or we want to take it back less, you have the ultimate flexibility with this type of enterprise fund to do this on an annual basis. And that's why we're recommending the approval of not only the utility fund, but also the stormwater fee. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there is a motion.
Yeah, made a motion. And if I just understand what the manager said, when budget time comes, that's when we decide, keep it the same, lower it. The study shows us we can get away with less money, or we need slightly more money. All right, so I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Commissioner Drosky?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Parnes?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Battle?
Yes.
Mayor Gantz?
Yes. Yep.
Next is public comment. No comment shall be made related to the personal life or personal qualities of any person, and no language which would offend the persons of ordinary sensibility shall be permitted. People will have 3 minutes to speak on non-agenda items.
We have, first up is Danielle Landere.
Sorry, it's me again. Could you do the pictures? I just want to know what's going on with the beacon of Deerfield, is what I'm calling it, the condo on the corner of 19th Avenue and 2nd Street on the Barrier Island. These are nighttime pictures. I sent emails, and I know some of the other neighbors have also sent emails to try to figure out why this is being allowed as a standard, I guess, for all future condos to be this bright. Some of us are keeping hurricane shutters on the side of their house because it's so bright at nighttime. I just think it sets a bad standard. And the sister condo that was built at the same time, a little down the street, actually covered their stairwells. So it's not as bright, but this is an open stairwell, and it's super bright. And so I don't even like to go in my backyard at nighttime because this is what my backyard looks like. It's that bright. Light is literally glowing onto the houses from this. So I was just wondering what's going on with that.
Thank you. We'll get you an answer.
Real fast, I'm going to take half our time. I
No,
can't?
I'm sorry, you're going to have to sit.
There's no husband-wife reciprocity?
Sorry.
No? All right, well,
Just a few more
I'm
minutes.
leaving. Thank you for your service, everyone. Not just commissioners, but thank you.
Why can't he come up?
Because we have a list of orders. Mr. Slattery, do you mind if Mr. Landere speaks before you? What's that? Mr. Slattery, do you mind if Mr. Landere speaks before you? He did not sign up. Is that all right, Mr. Landere? Thank you, sir.
It's okay, it's just busy days, you know it is. I know you guys, as a list of my schedule. But, name, Don Landere.
Address, please.
264 Southeast 18th Avenue, Deerfield Beach, Florida. I do have to say, I want to start out in saying I feel your pain. I'm not going to tell you what I do for a living, but I feel your pain. I thank y'all for your service, I mean that. But on the other hand, this picture doesn't do it justice. And it's like, I know other people here in this room, maybe on the dais, can appreciate that because they've seen it. And it's bad. It's like, it lights up like everything. And I feel almost it's like an illegal sign because the properties aren't sold yet. I don't know if that's legitimate, but like maybe you could put an illegal sign ordinance. Maybe get them the illegal lights for the turtle ordinance. I don't know. There's got to be a different angle here for this issue. It's like when you cross Hillsborough Bridge, just look a little bit like I guess like the direction of like 2 o'clock, and you see it coming. Like it's right there. And it's just odd. And I know the city has a contentious relationship with them already because all the rules weren't followed in building the project, and I know it's been going on for a while, and there's some struggles there that I may not understand, and I'm sure Mr. Morotis is on top of that, but it's kind of like it's this issue where it's just been forever, and I know that someone said they dimmed the lights or they're told to dim the lights. I can tell you from I'm not a registered contractor, from a builder though, I can tell you that those type of lights cannot be dimmed. And so they haven't been dimmed, if that was the agreement with the city. They're super bright still, but that's about it. Thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. Slattery. Thank you for doing that, by the way.
Sure. Once again, John Slattery, 1455 Southeast 5th Place. And I'd just like to make a statement that part of my frustration with feeling confident in your management of things such as the stormwater tax is tied into my discomfort and frustration with just fiscal management generally. And as illustration, the salaries I feel are out of control, and I don't understand, and I'd love for somebody to make me feel comfortable as to why we're paying nearly $500,000 a year for a city manager, a first assistant city manager, and a second assistant city manager. We are not that big of a business that we need to be this top heavy in management at this salary structure. I feel it's unjustified. And when I feel like you're coming back for another $45, you're coming back for this other fee and everything else, it's on top of these salaries, on top of these pension funds, and all of these things that I don't feel are being managed effectively for the citizens of Deerfield Beach to protect our investments and our property in the long run. That's what I wanted to state.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Katie Freitag. I have a list that we're going to go by, and after that, anyone else who would like to speak, more than welcome to. I'm sorry, Ms. Thor.
Katie Freitag, 418 Southeast 2nd Street. Prior to the meeting tonight, I had 3 stories to share regarding the city, the good, the bad, and the ugly. With one phone call to City Hall, I was able to take care of the bad and the ugly. That leaves the good. With the wonderful, and I use that term so sarcastically it's not even funny, job that FDOT is doing on Hillsborough, they very greatly closed down the center turn lane going from Hillsborough onto Federal this past weekend. The weekend where we have additional 2,000 people coming to the beach for Surfers for Autism, you could not turn north. You had to go to the beach whether you wanted to or not. I had a lovely call with Brad from the FDOT, and they were able to get that resolved rather quickly on Monday after they got the restriping done. Secondly, I mentioned to him regarding the light, the left turn lane light that was supposed to be installed on 6th Avenue coming from the west, that they forgot or didn't put into their plans after they gave us the initial plans, and they promised that it would be done. Brad went back and went into the minutes and the notes from the initial meeting that we had as citizens when they presented the plans, and he found the notes where they promised, FDOT promised us that they would put that light in, and he has guaranteed that that light will be now changed and reversed, and a turn lane will be put in for both coming from the east and the west. You will have a turn signal now. That is something that he said will be done within the next 30 days. It reminds us that FDOT is not our friend, please make sure that we are vigilant in every single thing they say to us. Make sure it's in writing. Make sure we go to every single one of the meetings. The meeting tomorrow night here, the meeting on the 22nd at the Doubletree, every single meeting that they put out. Make sure that we have people there. Make sure that we have lots of citizens there. Make sure we have lots of residents stating what's going on, making sure that we are paying attention to everything that FDOT is trying to get away with in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rita Massey.
Rita Massey, 349 Northeast 19th Avenue. I'm really so disgusted and discouraged when I go to the beach. In front of the Pear Restaurant, which has nothing to do with the restaurant, it is so disgustingly dirty that I can't understand why this exists. Don't we have regular maintenance people to keep the beach clean? It should be pristine. Everybody goes there. It is such a mess. Please take care of it and don't let it get that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amy K. Tanner? We're not as exciting as we used to be, I'm sorry.
I thought that was for my last time. I thought I couldn't speak 2 times. Oh.
Come on, you were going to
Amy K. Tanner, 111 Southeast 5th Avenue. Thank you. Otis Tanner Way, Deerfield Beach. I got up here the other night and said something about the sign, street sign on Southeast 5th Avenue. Southeast is on this side and Northeast is on this side. But the sign over here on the south side says Northeast 5th Avenue. And there was a sign on this corner of 5th Avenue, Southeast, that said Southeast 5th Avenue. But they took that one out. There's nothing on the north side. I took pictures of it, but I don't know how to make the pictures out of my phone. But I'll learn. But if you just drive down that road, you'll see it's a beautiful sign. It's, you know, the new signs that are big and bright, and it's kind of down a little bit. But there's nothing indicating northeast, and that takes you into the park. So you said that I had spoken to the person that was responsible for that, but I don't know who it was. But somebody might look at it, please. Because everybody in my neighborhood has called me and said, don't you know somebody? No, I don't. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Story, you wanted to speak?
I'd like to know is
I'm sorry, your name and address
I'm
for the record again.
Angela Stewart, 1041 Southwest 8th Avenue. I'd like to know, does the city have an ordinance about how many dogs somebody could have in their home? Right across the street from my mom, they have like 15 or 20, it's like it's a dog pound there. And then they have these little round blocks, cement blocks. When I tried to put them at my house, they told me that we couldn't have them there. But they have them all around the house. So I want to know, did the ordinance change? And you can put the blocks there, but I definitely want to know about the dogs.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Get
you.
some answers.
Somebody going to get back in?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public care to speak?
Terry Scott, 624 Northwest Second Way. Mayor and Commissioners, I just want to thank BSO publicly for the service that they have rendered to this city. And the other day, there was an incident in District 2. And BSO took care of that incident beautifully. It was well organized. They was doing a search warrant, I believe. And they were so well organized that I was quite impressed, and so was that community that was standing around. And I think that we need to really appreciate our officers, especially in Deerfield, when they're doing good. So I would like to just say thanks to Captain Snackenberg and his team for doing such an excellent job on the other evening.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, John Grassi, 1001 Southeast 12th Terrace, Deerfield Beach, Florida. As you know, it's our right and responsibility to question those of you in office. I would like to reference City Charter Ordinance Section 38-92. The city manager is to provide monthly expenditure reports to the City Commission. The city manager shall be responsible for providing the City Commission monthly reports indicating the amount of budgeted funds expended by each department, expressed as both a dollar figure and percentage of the department's budget for the fiscal year. Recently, Commissioner Drosky, on February 5th of this year, you met with 2 residents, and during the meeting you clearly advised them both that you've never received these documents. I was very concerned when I heard that. Because of my limited time, I'd like to know if the others have or have not received the monthly financials as spelled out in the ordinance referenced. Commissioner Battle, Miller, Parnas, and yourself, Mayor Gantz. Would you all please, or could you kindly show me that you have received these in hand today? Do you have them? Do you bring these to the meeting, the financials? Does anybody bring these? Didn't think so. I also would like to hear directly from the finance director and if he has been preparing these documents for the commission on a monthly basis, and if so, for how long? Did the finance director prepare these documents according to the ordinance for the previous commission that both Commissioner Miller and Mayor Gantz were a part of? Recently I spoke with one of the previous commissioners. He said he never received the documents on a monthly basis. Joe, you run a business. You look at those probably every week, maybe every day. So I'm very concerned. Actually, was very upset. How were these documents sent, by email, or were they printed out and sent directly from the finance director office to the city manager, or directly to the commissioner and city manager? Further, who else receives these documents? If not Joe Miller, I'm sorry. These financial documents are required to be provided to the city commissioners and mayor according to the city charter by the city manager. Most successful businesses today need to know where they are financially every day, and that is why we have an ordinance for you all to follow, so that you can at least look at these on a monthly basis. I've been told that you, or maybe some of you, have not been given these, and that is why I have all these questions. Our commission has a fiduciary responsibility to you, to those you serve, the residents of Deerfield Beach. We are approaching $200 million a year, and financial accountability and transparency is so important. Further, you have presented ordinances to give the city manager, in some case, free rein on how to handle money. However, the most basic requirements in our state charter are possibly not being followed, that are being avoided. Today, I feel the city manager has shown or failed to show that he is financially responsible in following our city charter as well as those that are representing us. I consider not following and knowing our financial position is more than negligent. Along with the management, I feel that the commission has shown that they are not financially responsible as well, and this alarms me.
Thank
Just
you.
one more minute, please.
Yes, you can.
I ask you again, do you have the last month of financials with all of you today? Okay. Would you be able to get those questions answered for me, Mayor?
We'll see.
Thank you. By the way, this is what it looks like on a monthly basis.
Next.
Excuse me. Dan Hers, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. As a public service to the citizens of Deerfield Beach, I wanted to update everyone on the progress of the Cove Hotel. For those of you who may have forgotten the details of the proposed Cove Hotel, let me provide a brief refresher. In November 2015, the Commission approved 9 variances for Blue Water 8 LLC in order to build a 134-room hotel, a 4-story, 208-space parking garage, a dock, and pedestrian boardwalk. The South Florida Business Journal quoted the owner as saying the property should be completed by 2017. According to an economic impact study performed by Walter Duke and Partners, the total economic impact of the hotel was estimated at $1.84 billion over its lifetime, was supposed to create 98 permanent jobs and add $430,000 annually to Deerfield Beach's property tax roll. Now let's fast forward to the present, and we find on the landsofamerica.com website a listing for the sale of 1.67 acres fully approved for a 134-room hotel and 359-seat restaurant with parking garage. The sales price is not given, but it says to contact Mike O'Leary for sales price information. Unfortunately, not only do the citizens of Deerfield Beach have nothing to show for approving 9 variances for the developer, but we are also stuck in a 10-year agreement with the developer covering the Cove Shopping Center, in which the city only collects $37,500 a year from the developer. This is a far cry from what the citizens were promised. I suggest to the commissioners and the city manager that before you approve another 9 variances to the next developer that comes to you to build a hotel, that you get at the very least the following items. 1, have a performance clause written into any agreement terminating the agreement if the developer fails to perform within a specific time frame. 2, get a financing commitment from a reputable financial institution. 3, get a letter of intent from a major hotel operator so you know what flag the hotel will operate under. And 4, at the very least, hire someone to negotiate on behalf of the city who has some experience in dealing with hotel developers. Also, Mr. City Manager, you may want to have someone remove all the graffiti off of the blue tarp surrounding the property.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the public?
Hi, Sarah Moran, 902 Southeast 10th Court, Deerfield Beach, Florida. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the clarification on the water treatment plant. I appreciate that. I'm glad that it is not compliant with, or is in compliance with the EPA. However, I would like to know if somebody could tell me that what the age is of our water treatment plant, and also is it considered to be antiquated? I have that question. The other thing I would like to clarify is the situation with the Kingfisher Canal. The money that's being spent there was committed back in 2013. It is 5 years later, and so I guess it's hard for me to say that that money is coming out of the stormwater fee when it was committed by this commission in 2013 to provide pollution controls at that time. And at that time, John Gerbino and myself and several other of the residents along the Kingfisher Canal made it very clear to the commission and the mayor that if we dredge this canal and we do not provide the proper pollution controls within a specific time period, say a year or so, it's going to fill back up. And I can tell you that that has happened. I've seen it. The other last one item that I would like to talk about is the property in our neighborhood at 903 Southeast 13th Street. In 2014, Anthony Dispensary, a former neighbor, and myself tried to get the commission to look at that property because it's 1.3 acres of green space that would have been available as a park for our neighborhood. Now, I appreciate the fact that this commission has replaced the children's equipment on the little park at 15th Street in the south area of the Cove. However, that park right there is on a very busy street, is very limited in size, and so it's only for very small and young children. The reason we asked for the commission to take a look at this 1.3 acres of green space is because in the south area of the Cove, there is no green space available anymore. This property, both myself and Anthony's Dispensary talked to our commissioner and the city manager about purchasing this property. We pressed it pretty hard. Even Catherine Hendrickson looked at the property, thought it was great property, would have been a great green space for the south area of the cove. Because as you may or may not know, we have a lot of adolescent children in our neighborhood who are running up and down the streets on their scooters, and a lot of people with dogs and everything else that have no green space to go to. And I can tell you that that property sold. The sign went down, and Anthony told me that he was told by the city manager for us to be quiet about it so that you guys could inquire. Could I have another minute, please?
Yes, ma'am.
So I was told, we were told to be quiet about that property so that the person that was selling it would not think, the bank, it was bank owned, that the bank would not think that we were anxious to get a hold of it. So we were quiet about it. The sign went down. This for sale sign went down, and I called him up, and it was bought by a couple of doctors that don't even live in Deerfield Beach. And I was told at the time that it would always remain a single-family residence. And the couple of doctors that have bought the property, it's an eyesore. They are renting it out to multifamilies. They tore down and did a bunch of landscaping work, and I don't know if that was in order to be compliant with the city, but now the building itself is even more of an eyesore, and it has a very old roof, which is a shingle roof, and what they have done is taken this elastomeric coating and put it on.
Ma'am.
Can I finish, please?
No, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
We can discuss afterwards if you'd like. Anyone else for the public care to comment? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close the public to be heard.
Next is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach appointing Alexander Brum to the Planning and Zoning Board as a regular member.
Make a motion that we approve.
Second. Have to be public hearing or no?
Public hearing on that, Andy?
Well, you have to open to the public, yeah.
Anyone from the public care to comment on this item? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close the public portion to be heard. We have a motion and a second. We have
Yes.
roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Parnes?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Battle?
Yes.
Mayor Gantz?
Yes. Comments by the city administration, city attorney?
I actually have it. In the matter of the case of Maria Espejo versus City of Deerfield Beach, Rosa Calderon versus City of Deerfield Beach and Somerset Charter School, and Jose Cepeda versus City of Deerfield Beach. They're all dealing with the charter school incident. Our defense counsel wishes to have a shade meeting, which is a meeting with just the commission, their counsel, the city manager, and myself, in the near future. So I'm just asking for that commission and asking for your consent to it. We will work on scheduling it, and then it will be noticed. So do I have your approval at least to work on scheduling that?
I thought it was scheduled for Monday night.
Was it?
I thought it was. Latasha, I was talking to, maybe she was thinking of
No,
that.
I believe you're
Maybe.
confusing that with a shade meeting dealing with union negotiations.
I might
Commissioner
have my
Miller.
shade meetings
Yeah.
confused.
Wrong shade. So I'm sensing unanimous consent to do that, and we will combine that and contact you for the purpose of scheduling it. Thank you.
Thank you. City manager?
I have nothing to report, but I do just want to thank the City Commission for their support with the Stormwater Utility Fund, and we look forward to addressing those issues in the coming years, and certainly stand behind our staff, and they'll do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller?
No comment.
Commissioner, Vice Mayor Battle?
Yes, sir. April 25th, District 2 meeting, 7 p.m. at the Technology Center. FDOT will be there to discuss MLK Boulevard, so tell your friends, neighbors, they're interested, and to talk about mobility in general. So please come out on April 25th at 7 p.m. at the Technology Center. Mr. City Manager, I already talked to, I don't know, I have not talked to that. Is there a possibility of reactivating the fines for placing trash on the swale after the pickup date? I get a slew of calls where residents are, after the trash has been picked up on Thursdays, they do their gardening, I guess, on Saturdays, and it stays there until the following Thursday, and the residents are complaining, so we need to see. And I know that there was, at one time, we used to fine the citizens, so check into that for me. Daniel Lawson Street, when can we get that name change on that street for Mr. Lawson? He was the young man that was killed in, not Vietnam, I'm dating myself, Afghanistan. Check on that for me. And finally, I just want to thank the Historical Society for helping us to fill out the application for the historical marker for the Memorial Park. I understand that it's in good hands now. It's on its way to Tallahassee. So we want to thank you all for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Parnas?
Yes. I would like everybody, including the commission, to understand that we're still one city. I don't have any children in Florida. I've never have, yet I have 4 kids, 10 grandkids. None of them went to school in Florida. But I gladly pay the school tax every year because that's our future children. So whether or not you had flooding in front of your house, we're one city. We're together. So what affects you affects me. And if something needs to be done in your neighborhood, I will support it. And I ask those of you to support us when we take care of a problem that affects many parts of the city. I would think District 3 may have the least amount of flooding in the city. But I support this tax or fee, whatever you want to call it. As a condo owner, it's going to cost me $2 a month. I can't buy a decent cup of coffee for that. But if I can keep water away from your house, I'll support it. So whether or not it affects you personally, it affects your neighbors. And I'd like to see us come together and say, if it's any part of this city, then it's my problem. Because I live here, I choose to live here, work here, retire here, or whatever. So ask the audience, tell your neighbors that this commission as a whole, whatever your problem is, will work to solve it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Drosky?
That's a good segue. You can solve your problems by coming to the Bourbon and Boots Festival this Saturday at Quiet Waters Park.
I don't drink,
Bring your boots. Sample. There's 15 vendors for bourbon at Quiet Waters Park. Top name country acts at Quiet Waters Park in Scenic District 4. That's this Saturday. And then the FDOT workshop for Southwest 10th Street is actually April 24th at the Doubletree Hotel. It's from 2:30 to 5:30. It's an open house format. They're going to try and make a presentation. But for those of you who are in the waterways in Independence Bay, this is a real concern to your communities. There's a bridge proposed in front of the waterways community, as you'll see on the proposed designs, which is very adverse to that neighborhood and just the entire corridor. It's projected, it's funded for 2025, but I as well do not have full faith in FDOT, and that probably will get moved up. This is a construction technique that even FDOT hasn't perfected. This is a project that is unprecedented in the state of Florida. It's basically a mile to mile and a half subterranean trench that they're building that'll be 15 feet below grade. However, to get that 15 feet, they actually have to dig 40 feet below grade. So you're digging 40 feet underground for a mile and a half, and it's projected to be 3.5 years There's no way. I see this project being completed in 3.5 years. I just don't see it. So, if you can't make the meeting on April 24th, then please visit the FDOT's website and make your comments known. Give them to any of the commissioners that are up here as well. This project is going to affect not those that just live along Southwest 10th Street. I say it at every meeting, but it's going to affect the entire city. It's going to divert traffic in different areas. It's going to affect our businesses here in Deerfield Beach. This is a big, big issue for our city. Our commission is united, and we're fighting this very strongly for you. But you have to make your opinions known to help us, and to let FDOT know what we're in favor of and what we're not. We have to, get our opinions out there, be it attending the meetings or online. At least give us the ammunition to fight for you. So please attend the meeting on April 24th at the Doubletree Hotel. And if you can't make it, please make a comment online or give it to one of us. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if did you mention about the green, grow, and bloom at the Arboretum?
I forgot.
Okay. District 4 event, yes. Green, Grow, and Bloom at the Arboretum celebration is this Saturday at 9 a.m. Encourage everybody to come out for that, as well as the other events that have been mentioned. Commissioner Drosky's 100% right about this 10th Street project. I know there were some people that thought that it wasn't that important. It's absolutely important, and it doesn't just affect the people in District 4, it affects this entire city. Some of the issues that can come forward on this and it affecting the economic engines that are in the western portion of the city are going to have a direct impact from everybody from 4 to the shore. So please make sure you're aware, get out there and participate in the process on it, and let your voices be heard. I can promise you that the speaker earlier tonight talked about FDOT. FDOT is no joy to deal with. This process has been long and arduous. We have meetings, and then we have pre-meetings to prep for those meetings, and that's been going on. I know Commissioner Drosky and I have been doing that for a couple of years now, and with others being involved as well. So, Vice Mayor Battle can certainly attest to it being on the MPO, that it's a major project, and this will have a direct impact on all of us in this city. Please participate. Please get involved. You can sign up for alerts on it so you can get more information, but I encourage you all to pay attention to that. There were some questions that were out there that were asked, like staff to kind of get with some of the individuals. It's my understanding that when it comes to the new airport tower that we have over across the bridge, that is being addressed through code enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Okay, Mr. Powers? City Manager, can we have Mr. Powers talk about that?
Good evening. Eric Power, Director of Planning and Development Services. Yes, the item is currently under code enforcement action. They actually have until April 13th to come into compliance. If they don't come into compliance by April 13th, they'll be at the special magistrate hearing on April 25th. I'm not aware of any conversation or any action that discussed a dimming, which was stated. I don't think that was ever, I don't know if that's something they were supposed to do. They actually installed lighting that was not per code. So they have been cited for that. It is actually a building violation that is being managed through code enforcement.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. If staff can get with some of the other individuals with some of the questions. Yes?
I can tell you that section 10-4 of the Land Development Code requires that only 6 domesticated household pets can be. Okay.
Anthony,
Just wanted to tell you that.
I think Ms. Storr left, so unfortunately she stick around and get her answers. We can get that information. And yes, the code did change many years ago when it came to the rounded buttons on the end of streets. You're not allowed to do the pointed ones, but you are allowed to do the rounded buttons. That was probably about 6 years ago on that. As far as the financial information, it's located usually right next to our mailboxes to the left. Whether or not we had a orientation to let everybody know where that's at, but I believe there was elected officials in the past that were upset that our mailboxes were being jammed each month with a large printout. So I happen to know where they're at, so I don't know if others do or not, but they are provided. As far as street signs missing, if someone could please get with the individual on that. Please talk to Ms. Tanner about that to make sure that that is taken care of. see. As far as the condition of one of the homes in the neighborhood, certainly code enforcement can look into that and see if they can address that situation. Updates on a private entity are going to have to come from the private entity. This is not unusual. 2008, we had a large push here in this city, and I was here as a private citizen fighting against what they called a TOD, which is a transit-oriented development zoning change that was done right across from JM Family, right across from where the new Wawa is, which is now being demolished, and is finally being developed here 10 years later. Okay, ideal situation? No, but I didn't hear a lot of complaints about that being put forward and taking such a long time to come forward. I can tell you it's a good thing that it probably wasn't developed, because a TOD designation is transit-oriented development that allows for a very, very high density piled into an area much higher than what it would normally be, because it's next to public transportation. The project that's being put in finally 10 years later is well below the maximum density, and actually received approval from the same people that I stood shoulder to shoulder with back in 2008 trying to fight against that zoning change at the time. So those situations are not unusual. But I will say this, and I think it goes to what tends to be misinformation that's put out there, or tell a lie enough times it becomes the truth. When it comes to that hotel, I did speak with the developer. I met with owners over there back at a certain time period to negotiate to find out if the developer was willing to pay for 3 solid years the full maintenance of that lot. They agreed to that. That was, I believe it was in around October. That was a proposal that I brought forward to the commission. The commission was okay with it. That was all derailed when a lawsuit came forward. Someone went online and said, well, we know you and the city manager met with the developer. The city manager and I never met with the developer. I spoke to the developer. I met with other owners over there. I eventually did meet with the developer. But taking that and trying to twist it into something else and trying to say that I lied about that is completely inaccurate. And when you take a video of an argument that I made in October regarding a 3-year agreement that was thrown out the window when a lawsuit came forward, and then twisting it into what was eventually agreed upon by the commission, that was brought forward to his credit by Commissioner Miller, for a 10-year agreement that got 50% of it paid for. 50% of the maintenance of that property is 50% more than they've had there in 50 years. There hasn't been a dime collected over there. I think, in probably at least, I don't want to say 50 years, I would say 30-year period, probably the early 90s. I think at one point there were some fees paid. Beyond that, nothing. So you might not like the deal, but it's certainly a lot better than where we were at. And with the city attorney's input on that, getting them to pay more than 50%, quite frankly, probably would have run us into some legal issues, or it might have been a bit of an issue for that. So this isn't like me trying to flip, or if you're going to put a little video up and show me at one meeting saying one thing and then act like that was the final agreement, it's just not accurate. Simply not accurate. So private development, they'll update us when it moves forward. We all hope it does move forward soon, but it's a private development. I believe that's it. Thank you all for coming out tonight and sticking with us. We have a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Is it spring break? Is it something new?